when I tell this story, I tell it in a way to like tell people or inspire them in a way of like, if you find that exact thing you want, and again, selfish desires align, it's like the best thing ever. Where it's like, for me, I was working those like 12 to 15-hour days every single day for like probably those last month and a half, 2 months, just straight. I was probably putting in, again, 100 hours a week for about almost like 2 months. And for me, it didn't feel crazy. It really felt like a fun vacation. Like I was like, I literally get to work in a mansion, you know, shower, get the best food because I get to just order out Chipotle. Like all this, it was just a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of that's really how it started. I remember once I got transferred into the art division. That's Tom calls it like our 2 weeks in Paris or whatever. But it was amazing. Like I literally sat next to him,
the honeymoon,
side by side for like probably like 15 hours a day, like literally just like sitting next to him, like crouched up on my laptop and my, you know, I was probably still using my like $200 laptop or something to like draw all this like first neon future concept art. I almost treat Impact Theory like the last place I'm going to work at. So what I mean by that is Tom has this vision of everyone who works here should work here, not should, but it's like he wants to build a environment where they want to retire here, right? And so I think Impact Theory is one of those places where I'm still so early on where I could change the direction of the company. Again, like I've done in the comic industry and everything. I feel like even in HR, if I have a great idea, I can pitch it to Tom, be like, here's how we implement it, and he'll do it.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jeremy, and you're watching episode number 2 of Backstage Career. My goal with the podcast is to show you what it's like to work behind the scenes with some of these influential people, and also to help you land your dream job with a mentor of yours. For the second episode, I'm talking to David Kim, who's the junior art director at Impact Theory. He works directly with the co-founder and CEO Tom Bilyeu on building intellectual property, characters, stories, imaginary worlds that will eventually be turned into movies and shows for Hollywood. All right, here are 3 things that I think you'll particularly enjoy in this conversation. Number 1, we talk about how David got his internship and specific tactics that he used to get Tom's attention. Number 2, we talk about how David went from an intern that didn't know shit about comics to leading the comic division 2 years later. And number 3, we talk about why David is starting 2 companies on the side this year that he eventually plans to sell back to Impact Theory. And lastly, I included timestamps in the description below in case you feel like skipping to the parts that interest you most. All right, hope you enjoy. Let's dive into the interview. To get started, like, I'd love to hear about your early hustles in high school. I know there was a couple in the clothing stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, man, you gotta start from elementary. That's where it started.
Oh, damn.
Not really, but definitely if I really look back into my life and I check like when did I actually start doing something that looks similar to what I'm doing now, clothing was definitely the first like business move. But then when I look back in elementary, I remember when I was living in Hawaii, we had like this fair, and I think I was in like 3rd grade, 4th grade, I'm not sure, but definitely in elementary school. And yeah, there was this fair that they threw for the school, and they're all like, oh, you know, make some stuff, make some arts and crafts, or, you know, like sell a service. Like some people made lemonade and, you know, all this type of stuff. And I don't know, like I just got together with my brother and I was like, let's make a comic. So I just made like a short comic and I actually like drew it, and I think I kept redrawing it and I stapled them together. Or did I find a printer? I'm not sure, but that's kind of how I did it. So I made a small comic book.
Wow,
and then I
no
just
clue.
like sold them for tickets at the fair. So that was like my early memory of doing something that was like for exchange, you know. So that was
how
fun.
many bucks did you make?
Here's the thing that's terrible. Like I actually have a really bad memory. If I asked my brother, he actually probably would remember, but probably a dozen or so.
Pretty good for elementary school.
Yeah. So that was like a fun thing. And I remember throughout like until I got into high school, I had like friends who would sell candy and I would join them on their hustle. I feel like everyone did that, like sold candy or sold pencils or something like that.
Yep.
So that was fun. And then yeah, I got serious. It's actually very interesting because I never saw myself as a person who would be interested in business. I always saw myself as an artist, and I always felt like those were kind of like misaligned. Like the creative person doesn't think about money and they just like work for their craft. So it was very interesting when I think definitely I remember at 17, I really sat down to think about what I wanted to do with my life. And that was because I really got into TED Talks and all this type of stuff. Like as YouTube was blowing up, there's more educational content on there. And I remember coming across Simon Sinek's video
Mm.
on finding your why. And I don't know, that hit me so hard when I was like around 16, 17. And then I just literally watched like every day, like a few hours of his videos, all his TED Talks, found his website, like all his books, bought all his books, and just devoured them. And so that's when I think I really started getting to this mindset of like teaching yourself how to learn and really trying to figure out what am I here for? What do I want to use my unique set of skills for? And then I saved up, probably with me and my brother. We worked, actually, I guess this counts. So my dad had a job as an artist, and I'm pretty sure that's how, I got inspired to getting into art.
What
Sadly, he never.
exactly was he doing?
So I think in the very, very beginning when he came to the United States, he tried to sell fine art paintings because that was kind of like his bread and butter.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd do like beautiful landscapes, like super hyper realistic and
Oh wow.
stylized and all this type of stuff. Um, but no one would buy them, or at least very, very few would sell. Like he would get into galleries and all this type of stuff, but he would like try to hustle that way. But he finally found out, I guess like every artist finds out, there's like a commercial part of art and then there's like this fine art part of art. And so he was able to adapt his own style of commercial art. So this is the type of stuff when you go to like Santa Monica Pier or you go into San Antonio Riverwalk, you'll see people with like stalls and a table and they're like painting a name. So they use like different characters. My dad used like Hawaiian, like tropical animals because that's kind of where we started that thing. But other people would use flowers and Disney princesses and all that to spell out your name, right? So
So he did
that's kind of
that.
what he did. Yeah,
Wow.
so he really started doing that, and I think for a little bit we actually did very well with that. So he started his own business. Funny thing is, I never thought of him as a business person, but when I look back at it, I'm like, oh yeah, he was like definitely an entrepreneur. He tried to start
Yeah.
his own business in a new country, and he was able to support like 4 children, and I was just like, holy fuck, like that's crazy.
Dude,
Like
that
I would
explains so
never
much about
imagine.
you, dude. Like both from the art and the business perspective. So was he selling this like on the streets, or did he have like a shop or?
Yeah, I mean, he went. Let me think about that. I think most of it was he would just buy a vendor space in front of like another popular shop.
Mm-hmm.
So I really remember he would work out of this Cold Stone that was really popular in Hawaii, like part of the street. As people were handing out flyers and all this to different places, like he would just be set up in front of a Cold Stone. And I remember like I would always like if we did well at that day, we would get like Cold Stone ice cream or something. So that's something I remember. And so I started working. I wouldn't say for him because it's a family business, but
Yeah.
it's like I would help out, carry packages, unpack them, and all that. So probably around the same elementary school time, we would start. I would start learning just about at least like getting him packages and stuff. Um, and yeah, we would literally spend like just 10 hours like waiting for him to be done with work before we go home or anything like that.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it started. And then when I was probably around 15, I started learning the name art business because he's like, look, you have to like start helping me with the job or anything like that. So first it would start off with, again, now I learned how to pack the paintings and the frames and all that. And then did that for probably like 6 months or a year before I was like, should I get paid for this? I'm like, Dad, can you at least like pay me for like the
Cut
weekend
me
work
in.
I'm doing? Yeah, because it's like on top of school and homework, like on the weekends, we would just spend like 10 to like 12, 14 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday, just like sitting there, like packing art and everything. And even if there was like no sales, he wouldn't go home. He would just wait until like literally they like kick us out. He's just like, I gotta make money.
That's
And I
hilarious.
never understood it, but obviously looking back, it makes sense because you're literally trying to feed like 5 other mouths in
Yeah.
the family. Um, so yeah, that's how I started, I guess, his business. And then I would do that like after school for like 2 to 3 hours. He would just sit me down, and then I would have to learn the painting thing. And probably after like 6 months, he was like, "All right, go out there. Like now you should actually do this." But before all that, going back to trying to make clothing,
Yeah.
that's when I started making those $20 like a weekend. So me and my brother were working for him, so we both would pull our money of those $20, and it took us probably a year or two before we could actually buy the Wacom Intuos Pro. So that's like for me that was like the newest version of the Wacom, which was
Uh-huh.
like around 300 like $25 back then. So it was a lot of money for like a high schooler. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I finally got it. So that's when I got into digital art. So I always
Okay.
did traditional art, but now it's like, all right, time to do digital, so I could, make clothing designs and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I could keep going, but if you have any like questions
Yeah,
about.
so I guess what from there, how do you start the clothing business, and like what did that look like? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, this is when I moved to Texas. Uh, my family moved around a lot during this time. So we was born in California. We lived in
Hmm.
Hawaii for about 7 years, moved back to California, then moved to Texas, Georgia, passed through Texas, got back to
Jesus.
California, like lived there until high school. Basically, I was in my junior year, and we finally like reallocated to Texas for like the long extent of time.
Was this for your dad's like art, or what? Why were you guys
Yes,
moving?
actually, very true. This is very much related to his art. So it's like the thing is with his art is how often are you going to buy a name of yourself?
Yeah.
Probably once,
Yeah.
So you only have like one customer. So he would have to find a
Interesting.
place that was touristy in a sense. So Hawaii was great for that. A lot of tourists,
Yeah.
but also another thing is Hawaii is very expensive. Um, so I think if I like now again as I'm older, I get to look back of when we started moving, and it
Yeah.
was around like the time of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So that's when it's like, all right, like I see. So we were moving a lot to like figure out our financial situation, just like every other like family in America. Um, so yeah, it was around then I believe that my dad had to sell the house and all this
So
type of
was
stuff.
he moving based on like the flow of tourists, or was it that like he exhausted like all the local money funds, or like what? Why were you guys moving?
I'm sure like a reason of both, and then because I remember he would first try to find a place where it was like low rent,
Mm-hmm.
so because Hawaii's rent is like crazy, but so that's why he looked into like Georgia and Texas, because he was like with his money, like in Hawaii we would get like maybe a one bedroom apartment, and then in Georgia it's like a three-story house is like ready for you, or
Mm.
it's just like so I think he was looking for something, especially with us, like there's I don't know how many people lived with us, but at different times of our life, like we had our grandparents living with us, so there could be as much as 8 people in the same house
Oh, damn.
or anything like that. So, yeah, I think he was looking for something like that. But I think you're very much correct. Like he was also looking at like where's tourist attractions coming from. So we visited Texas, which is also where some of our family is. That's where Jay is. Um, and then California is also where our grandparents are. And so California was definitely a better place for like tourist stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Santa Monica Pier and everything like that. So I think that's where he started to work while we were in high school. Also, actually, yeah, around then. And then when we moved to Texas, we were in Dallas area. So there was like swap meets. So there would no longer be like this crazy place with a lot of tourists, but there would be like swap meets where the locals will always come around to like buy stuff
Mm-hmm.
during the weekends. So yeah, that's kind of the main reasons for his move. And then so that ultimately connects into starting the clothing business, because to start the clothing business I was like, first I need the materials, so I got the materials, I got the programs. Adobe hopefully doesn't listen to this, but I definitely cracked all of the programs, and I was like, I'm like, I'll pay you back one day. I promise I'll pay for all these services.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so that's I started learning how to do the digital art, and that's when I talked to my brother, and I was like, we should start this together, because he also liked art, and we also both liked clothing design. Um, and I was actually wondering, like, why did I even get into clothing? And to be honest, it wasn't because of fashion. Like, again, anyone who knows me in high school, even now, like, I wore the same pair of like t-shirts, jacket. Like, I had no sense of fashion really.
That's funny.
Um, so I never really even bought clothing. But I do remember a memory that was in middle school where it's like all the cool kids wore like Supreme, Bape, like the hundreds. And I was like, what is this? Like, there's this whole other world where all the cool people are wearing like this cool pieces of clothing. And back in middle school, like, I was super awkward. I couldn't like look at people in the eye. I couldn't say hi. I was like really in my shell. And so I really thought that if I wore the clothing, I would be accepted. I'll be cool. I'll be able to have this confidence. And man, I begged my mom so hard. Because it's like obviously when you're back then and you're trying to like feed like 4 children, it's like we're not spending clothes like $35 on a piece like a t-shirt.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, we have to. And so I was at a Zoomies like begging her for this Neff t-shirt. Now Neff isn't really even around, but like back then that was like the hottest like brand you could buy. So it's hilarious. I wish I had a picture of this, but I would wear like an extra large like Neff t-shirt in like high school or something coming in. Oh my God. And I thought, yeah, and then what I noticed is I get to high school, or like actually no, that was still in middle school, and like no one cares. Like no one looks at you differently.
Yeah.
And that's when it really hit me. It's like, oh, you have to be the person that's cool enough to wear the cool clothing versus like the cool clothing does the work for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that was definitely one of the inspirations of like, oh my God, like people are dropping a lot of money for clothing. And I found out clothing is as much selling status as it is the art on the clothing, depending on how you brand yourself. And so that's where I was like, oh, no one's going to buy like posters, or no one's like commissioning me at the moment. But if I just put my art on a t-shirt, suddenly like everyone wants to wear it in a sense.
Dude, when I was in high school, I used to think about like creating like influencer programs for like the cool kids, where you'd connect like the cool kids to like the up and coming brands, so they would get like free clothes or stuff. I always thought that would be like the best way to like start a brand, because everyone wants to wear what the cool kids are wearing, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay them because they're kids, you just give them free clothes and they're like, oh hell yeah.
That's actually genius. And the funny thing is, I think when we were starting the clothing brand, we knew nothing about marketing, nothing about business. But again, like I feel like anyone who just pays attention to life will understand like what moves people. And so that's one thing I think helped in a sense. If like because I was a quiet kid, as I got more popular in Texas, because that's when I got to break out of my shell. Because my thought process was, no one knows who I am here. I could literally change my personality and no one will know that who the real me is until that becomes the real me, because that was someone I was trying to aspire to be. And so as I was building that personality, I would always see like that quiet kid in the corner of class like drawing in his notebook or anything, and I'd always try to talk to him because I knew like they always had like something in their thought process that no one else was thinking.
Yeah.
And because I felt very similar to that, and I think again you're able to observe differently when you're not the center of attention versus when you are the center of attention.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me a lot with learning again what make people tick. It was just like so obvious of like, especially in Texas, where I felt like every American stereotype, not really true, but it is true. Like the jocks are dating the cheerleaders and all this type of stuff. And there's the cool kid crowd, the weed crowd, the skating crowd, like all this like different like groups of people. And I would try to learn from each of them. And so, yeah, that's when I figured out, like you're saying, it's like, what if we just put the clothing on the coolest people? And funny thing is, I wasn't cool enough where I could just like straight up talk to the coolest people in high school. But I was also thinking all these brands, like they all age up. So I was like, I should actually start marketing to middle schoolers before they get into high school. So it's like those middle schoolers think high schoolers are cool. I can just give them free clothing, and the coolest middle schoolers are going to be wearing them going to. So like that was kind of like my thinking process behind the marketing side of things. But in the beginning, it would literally be me standing in the hallway, like selling t-shirts from my backpack, or just like try not to get caught, because I'm pretty sure that was illegal. Like you can't sell like stuff on school grounds.
How much were you selling them for? Was it like compared to the big brands, was it like half price or?
Yeah, so this is where I think this is where more of the art side of things came in, whereas I felt bad for charging people like more than like only now do I understand that every branch before it hits the market at least marks it up 100%, or 50. I don't know what the exact markup is, but it's basically double what they bought it for. If they bought for 50 cents, they sell it for $1. If they bought it for $1, they sell it for $2. But because some of them I was actually just making by myself, so I would get the blanks. There was a heat press at a different section of the school, so I would beg my teacher to let me use the heat press after like school is done. So I would just stay after school after 5 p.m. just like heat pressing shirts for like a couple hours. And then, so the labor cost in my head was zero, so I would just sell it a few dollars
That's
more
classic,
than,
yeah.
because I didn't even price in like how much time I put into the design, the ideation, the marketing.
Yeah.
Right? I was just like, all right, cool. I bought the t-shirt for like, let's say $5. I have the design print, which is like 50 cents. It's like, cool. Like maybe I'll sell it for a few dollars more than that. So it kind of started with that. But once we started selling online, we tried to mark it up a little bit more, because we're like, oh yeah, we have to like ship it and we have to understand that. Should we pay for the shipping? Should we let them pay for the shipping? What would the conversion rates would be? That's when I started thinking more price consciously. But then, like if I think about it honestly, and I look at my P&L, I think after our first official online drop, we still lost like probably like $500. And that was because I was like, oh, we're gonna make this brand the biggest thing ever. We got a plan for like 2 years ahead. So I would literally buy like thousands of stickers, like hundreds of boxes,
Oh wow.
because you get a bulk deal, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, I get to save like 50 cents on each
Think
sticker if I
big,
buy it.
baby.
Exactly. So I was like, no, this will all pay off like in the long term. I'm here for the long run. So that's kind of my thought process behind that.
Word.
But yeah, that's how I got started.
And so you did that all throughout high school?
Yeah, so I would say I did that throughout high school. I was still working with my dad on the weekends, probably putting in like at least 12 hours every single day on or every weekend. And this is where I was like, man, I have like no fun time. I really felt like I didn't. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did. And then in high school, I think what I did because I couldn't really play on the weekends is I started a club in high school called CAM, so Community of Artistic Minds. So this is where it's like all my creative friends who was into music, videography, dancing. This is where Jay comes in. This is where my brother who loves video editing came in. This is where like me music friends, all the people who rapped, sang. Um, so yeah, we just all came together and we're like, look, like we all have skills. We also don't have money, but it's like we can exchange those skills with each other. And so yeah, I'll be like, I'll draw you an album cover. You'll make a song. He'll record the video. Jay will dance in it, and that's literally what we did in
Oh,
high school.
sweet.
So that's how we kind of got to really make tight connections, and I'm still tight with a lot of them now. So it's really cool to have that.
Nice. So how do you go from the I forget, did you go to college?
Yes, I did.
You did, okay. So what did that transition look like? And did you graduate from college or did you
Nope,
you did, okay.
dropped out.
Oh,
Yeah.
you did not, yeah. So I guess like what did that look like first couple years of college and then like at what point does impact theory come into the picture?
Yeah, and I think they definitely tie into each other in the sense of where my head was at during that time. So I think, yeah, to understand my personality plus also my mindset around college was I didn't want to go to college. Um, but
Mhm.
this is coming from obviously Asian family. I feel like any family in America, like, everyone's pushing their kids to
Oh
college.
yeah.
But especially a couple years ago, yeah, it's like that was the thing. I feel like nowadays it's a little bit shifting into, is it really worth it? Is all like more of that conversation coming up. But back then, I was still having those thoughts. I was like, I'm like, I could put all this time and all, let's say, this money into a clothing brand. And I'm like, bro, like, just give me 4 years and like $10,000. I'll make this clothing brand amazing,
Yeah.
right? Well, obviously, my parents like, no, like, go to college, get your scholarships, get your like loans, and just do it. And I was one of those lucky kids where technically college was free. And I say technically because I still had to like take out loans, but in the grand scheme of things, when I dropped out or graduated, I basically would only get like maybe around 10K of loans. So
Yeah.
like compared to like the average person, that was like nothing. So my parents were like, this is literally a grand opportunity. You're going to a state school. It's not anything prestigious. And that's one thing that, my parents really pushed me into like trying to get into better colleges. But even throughout high school, I already had my mindset of like, I'm trying to do business. Like I'm not trying to, spend my time like studying for all these like tests and everything. But luckily, I still did well in those classes. Like
Oh, so you
I
want
was,
to start a clothing brand. At that point you
yeah,
were like business is the route, yeah.
that was my 100% like what I was gonna do. I was gonna do
Hmm.
my dad's business on the side to fund the clothing brand, and then the clothing brand ultimately will scale up to take over, whatever job I would have,
Gotcha.
in a sense. So that was kind of a mindset already when I was around 17, 18. And again, that's, reading Start With Why. Funny thing is, I never got into 4 Hour Work Week. I still haven't read it yet, but like I felt like I already had that mentality where I would
Hmm.
just be, listening to people saying similar stuff. I was like, yeah, like take control of my life, fuck the system kind of thing. Like I don't need all that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my mindset going into literally everyone around me is like, go to college, get the best degree. Everyone had kind of that mindset. Um, but yeah, I really felt like with my personality, I don't do well in like strict like one, two, three, go to this class. Then I was like, even when I got into college, I was like, okay, fine, I'll go to college because college is a place where you get to choose, your major. Like
Yeah.
it's not like in high school where you have to take all like basic classes until I get to college, and it's like, oh, actually you can't learn that web design class until you go into like the first 3 years of college. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I only got here so I could learn web design so I could build this clothing brand, but it's like I can't even take that class until I'm like 3 years in.
Yeah.
Hated that. Um,
That's the same.
so yeah, that was kind of my mentality going in. I still went because again, my mom made a lot of sense. It's like you're basically going for free. You can make all those clothing connections. You could sell to those people, and like, she would try to convince me one way. I was like, you know what, you're right. I'll start a new club there. I'll have all those people, be creative, and so that's literally what I did. I went. I started with art for the first year. Basically dropped out the next year because I was like, they're not teaching me, they're not teaching me fast enough, and they're not actually teaching me what I wanted to learn. Um, and then so I just took literally, I found that one quote unquote degree that allowed me to take whatever class I wanted, and it was called interdisciplinary studies.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, like, I knew going in that this is actually not a real. It is a real degree, but not really. Like colleges don't, like job people aren't gonna look at that and be like, I know exactly what you did in college. They're gonna be like, what the hell is this?
It's kind of like the buffet degree, It's like you
Exactly.
get to pick whatever you
Exactly.
want.
So yeah, so that's where I felt like I had the most freedom. So that's where I took like psychology classes on top of taking a marketing class, on top of taking like a business class. It would just be like all over the place. So that was a lot of fun in that sense. But again, I still felt like I just learned a lot faster on the internet. Like again, at this time you had YouTube tutorials, you had like books. And so yeah, that's kind of my thought process going in. And yeah, I was still doing clothing. Clothing did definitely feel like it kind of fell to the wayside a little bit because I was trying to start a club there. I was also working um, another job during the week, and this was like as a chef in the kitchen in the school, and then I
Oh
would
wow.
also like do some of like Taco Bueno, Burger King, like they would have like fast food chains inside the school, and so I would
Was
just
that
have all
just like
those.
to pay for school as well, or were you like saving up for the closing stuff?
I would say both.
Yeah.
Like, I knew ultimately I would have to pay off the debt, and I kind of hated the feeling of having debt. Like, I did not like owing somebody like money. Um, and so, yeah, I was saving up for paying off debt in the future, but also, yeah, like saving up as much cash so I could fund the business. And because I would say clothing, depending on how you structure it, it's actually not that hard to start. But the way I was thinking about it is I was going through the like buy in bulk, buy a certain limited supply, and then sell out.
Mm-hmm.
I really was thinking like the Supreme model was the thing because obviously they were the king back then. It's like they had stuff sold out. Everyone thinks it's hot because it's sold out.
The
Do it
drops,
again,
yeah.
sell out. Exactly.
That's how the
And hype up
YouTubers
the
do it
drop.
nowadays.
Say that again.
That's how the YouTubers all do it nowadays.
Yes. I think yeah, that's still a great business model for like exclusive. So for like the sense of exclusivity, I don't know how to say that, but like
Exclusivity. Yeah.
yes. Okay, so yeah, that's a great way to create hype and demand. And again, it creates a sense of status because then you're the first one in line to get it, or you paid a certain price to get it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the similar model I was trying to do in high school. And to do that, like each launch would cost around like 2K or so. And so that's where it's like, okay, we got to save up that much amount of money. Um, and yeah, I could depending on how much more you want to know about college, I could also just go into how I found out at Impact Theory because
Yeah, yeah, let's
sorry.
do that. Yeah.
Okay.
What point does impact theory enter the picture?
And so Impact Theory probably entered around my sophomore year in college. So again, still watching YouTube videos, still trying to learn from all the great people, and then, still devouring some of Simon Sinek's content. At that point, I was probably listening to Simon Sinek, Gary Vee. I think Gary Vee was definitely the one that started coming into the picture
Mm-hmm.
around that time. But then I came across the Simon Sinek video, the one that went viral all over Facebook.
Yep.
And that's where, the first blue you see. But the thing is, I knew nothing about impact theory. So I'm like, I don't care who this interviewer is. I only care about, who Simon is.
That's about
Do you want to say
millennials,
anything about
right?
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just kind of that moment where now looking back, I was like, oh my God, like I saw this video like years ago. Um, but so I was looking into that type of content. And when I got into impact theory, that's where it's like, oh my God, they had all these entrepreneurs, they had all these sports people, they have all these great people with, amazing mindset, telling them their story of like how they got from nothing into becoming successful over time. And so, yeah, I just started Devour. I just put up a playlist. And so when I'm going to one class to another class, I would have it on 2 times speed. So I would able to be consuming like a 5 minute section in 10 minutes. So after a few classes, I would have one video done. So like that's kind of like how much information I was trying to devour every single day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? Uh, I'm trying to create this clothing brand, right? But ultimately, I'm trying to create this clothing brand to create a very rabid community, because the clothing community is, again, the people I feel like who are going to stay out in line for like 3 days just to get a sneaker. And I was like, I kind of want, like, I want the sense of that community over a certain idea. And that idea was percolating throughout the couple years while I was listening to Simon Sinek. It was just, what is your why? And that's when me and my brother, we really sat down and started figuring out, like, why are we doing all this? What is the purpose behind all this? And it came to the simple statement, like, if Simon's is inspire others to do what inspires them, I was like, our goal is to improve our lives so that we may improve the lives of others. So everything we do, every decision we make is, does this improve my life? Ultimately to improve the lives of others. And if it doesn't hit both of them, then it's like, I probably shouldn't be doing this thing. So it's like, it stops me from becoming just selfish, where it's like, okay, I could technically improve my life, which is making my life better, but if that takes away from somebody, then I can't do that. So it created this double prong thing where first it made me feel like I'm advancing, but I also have a bigger purpose than myself, right? Everyone needs that sense of, working for something greater than them. And so for me, it was like, I want to try to build a community. And ultimately, in the same way that Simon Sinek is doing, is inspire them to do the same thing, to improve their lives so they can improve the lives of others. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, let's just create this chain reaction with this clothing brand. And I really wanted to keep it in a way where it's like anyone who buys the clothing would understand that is the purpose of that person. And it would kind of become like a mindset clothing thing, but I still want it to be cool, because there's this weird thing where it's like mindset and like improvement doesn't feel cool for some reason.
Yeah.
So I was trying to break,
especially in high school.
Yeah, like I was trying to create, a sense of cool around that. But yeah, so I would say that's when I got into their content. And that's when I was starting to listen to not just interviews, I was listening to the AMAs with Christopher. And like now I'm remembering, Jared was there. He was like the marketing director back then.
Yeah.
I would be listening to all those videos. And that's when I heard Tom say something, which was, oh yeah, we're trying to build a studio that rivals Disney. And I was like, very interesting. And that's really got what piqued my interest, because I was like, wait, I only see interviews, but actually they're creating narrative story.
Yeah.
And that was also like, ultimately after the clothing, my whole plan was to create an animation studio. And so it's just like, I don't know exactly why, but I think I was just, again, interested in like, storytelling, and animation is like the greatest way in a sense. Like it literally mashes in voice acting. You have to understand acting in a sense. You have to understand music. You have to understand composition. Like all these things that mash in together. Same thing with movies, right? They literally take all art forms and then make it into one. So that's where I was like, cool. Like it seems like they're doing that. I'm gonna just keep that in the back of my head. But I'm gonna continue this clothing thing until one day my friend, someone who was part of the high school club group, we all still hung together even if we didn't go to the same college, and I was telling him about like Impact Theory and all this like cool stuff they're doing, and he's like, wait, so they're trying to make a studio, and this guy you say, he's super successful, he already has a studio, he's probably like 20 years ahead of you, he's just like, why don't you just work for him for a little bit? And I was like, nah, I'm already doing my own thing, like I'm putting this all into this, I have college, I have all this type of thing. He's like, all right, yeah, just all right, cool. And so, but when he said that, like, that put a seed in my head. I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, that probably would be smart. It's like, there's this person who's like 20 years ahead of you. Shouldn't you be able to at least skip like 10 years if you could just like take all of his knowledge, and then you could always like go off and like, start your brand again, or always do it on the side or something like that. So that's where the first idea came in.
All right. And then, I mean, the seed was planted, and how did it grow?
Yeah, so I had to wrestle with that. I don't know if it was seed I wanted it to grow, because I was like, I wanted to keep doing my own thing. There's the whole thing of like being independent.
Yeah.
But then it really, stepping back from your own ego and being like, what would be the best for my career in a sense, but also what is going to be the thing that leads to helping the most amount of people in the long term, right? I could go by myself and I could hit maybe a few amount of people and then start that chain reaction, or I could learn from this person and then I can always go back and like continue to build this out. So it's like, why do we go to college? Why do we sacrifice 4 years? It's because you're trying to learn from someone who's smarter than you to give you that information so you could take it and like implement it somewhere. It's like, oh yeah, this is literally like education. And then that's where like that switch flipped, where it's like, even I feel like I even had that like mindset where you're like, turn anything into a positive, always turn it into advantage to you. So when I was one example that relates to this is when I was working for Taco Bueno, and literally I'll be up at like 5 a.m. like trying to mix refried beans in a sandwich. And man, that thing was caked. And I was just like, oh my God, like my arms are tired. You know, I'm getting paid probably like, I think it was like minimum wage, like $7.25 or something.
Damn.
For this, right? And I was like, why am I doing this? And it's just like, oh, it's because I'm exercising. This is my morning exercise. They're paying me to literally exercise. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. They're literally giving me money so I can work out my arms. And so that, you know, that kicks you into a different mindset versus like, oh, I'm literally getting paid minimum wage to be up at 5 to like, you know, mix beans at like the cold like morning. And so that's kind of how I use that switch. And same thing with this, where it's like, I could be, you know, leaving my clothing brand and leaving college and leaving my family and all this to work for somebody just so, you know, I could take advantage of by corporate America. But like, you know, you would have this idea of like what a job is. Or it's like, it's literally education. It's like the best education you can get.
Mm-hmm. You're getting paid to go to school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. And so, yeah, you're not even paying them to learn that information. If anything, they're paying you to learn that information.
Yeah.
And so I didn't hear about this quote until afterwards, but it's like that Warren Buffett quote or somebody else where they went up to an investor and it's like, can I work for you for free? And like, you teach me all this type of stuff. And he's just like, you couldn't afford me. Like the guy who was offering the job almost is just like, you can't afford me. Like the information I'm giving you is way too valuable. And I didn't know about that then, but you know, looking back now, it's like that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Depending on, you know, where you place yourself, the people, the information, the connections is invaluable to the time that you sacrifice. And so that's kind of how that seed started growing, where I started having that mind shift again, where it's like, oh, this is just education. Work is just education, depending on how you place yourself. And so this is when I went like hard. This is when, again, I was literally listening to like probably 8 hours of content every single day until I got through like all of the YouTube channel, like all the AMAs,
Holy shit.
And because I was like, if I'm going to sacrifice a future to try to even work with this person, I'm going to know if this person is a scam or not. Because at that time, there's a lot of gurus coming up on the internet space and everything. And it was a lot of like, I always have like red flags or like I'm really sensitive to those type of things.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure like, if I'm going to be working for somebody, this is like a good person to work for. So yeah, doing a lot of research, literally, I don't even know if Tom knows this, but I would literally like try to stalk each person. So like for Tom, I'll try to find his personal Facebook page. I'll try to see what type of posts he made. I found like a Reddit AMA he did like 4 years ago before he even like had Impact Theory. I would look through all of his answers and see how he answered each person. Like, is he a good person? Is he not?
That's funny.
I literally found his address, his phone number, his
everything. I did exactly the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, with every single one, like
So,
with everyone that was working
awesome.
there as well. I was like, I need to know everything. And I found it was crazy that we were able to find his address, you know?
You know what the thing is? Yeah, I feel like once you're on the internet, it's actually, I'm like, nothing about myself is that private.
Yeah.
Because there's literally services that would sell you their information if you paid the price. No,
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
pay the price, but I was just like, oh my God, like they literally have a directory of everyone's address, where they lived in the past, you know,
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. So yeah, very similar to you. I did the same thing. I got in contact with people in the Facebook group. That's when Sean worked there. And I was messaging Sean on Instagram, messaging Will. And I was just in the Facebook group for about a year, just like doing art in a sense. So anytime there'd be like a lesson or something, I would draw like an art piece related to that
wow.
lesson, or I would do fan art of Impact Theory. So I was like, you know, the whole like, this is when Gary Vee's, you know, hammering the jab, 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 right hook. So obviously I was coming in with the ask, which is, do you guys have a position for me? And
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about a job, because I was like, I literally don't have any skills that would be useful to this company.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I haven't graduated college. I haven't really done anything in a like skill set sense that they would need, because they're mainly in production, at least what I was seeing, right? They're
This
doing
was before
production,
they ever
marketing.
started with comics, right?
Yeah, this is before, yeah, they had anything comics. They kind of talked about it like, oh, we want to, you know, create this narrative thing. So I was like, how can I get my foot in the door here? And this is where I finally got the email of Jared. So marketing director back at the time. I was like, oh my God, got in contact with the marketing director. I should try to find it. But yeah, it was like probably a year before I finally got an opportunity. But during that year, I was messaging him, giving value in the Facebook group community,
Can you go like more
messaging
in depth
him.
in that? Because this is the part that I'm really interested in, like the different original ways that people like, kind of like the third door. You know, I don't know if you've heard that book, Alex Banayan, but it's like
Yep.
how did you get in? You know, and like what, like in detail, like what were you doing?
All right, I'm looking through my Gmail to see. All right, so the first message I sent Jared was in October 2017.
Okay,
So so I said, I don't remember anything I said, but I'm gonna just try read it straight
let's do
from
it.
the email. So hi, Impact Theory. My name is David Kim, a 20-year-old student at UNT. Attached below is my official resume, but knowing Tom, you guys are probably more interested in where I want to be and not what I've done.
Hell yeah.
Um, my dream is so outrageously parallel to what you guys are building that I did a double take when I first heard about Tom and why he was building Impact Theory. I'm currently working on a second business that will generate enough profit to give me the foundation to work for Impact Theory for free until I can prove myself worthy. Important. It would be it would work best if I could start with you guys in the spring of summer of 2018. This would give me enough time to build the business and save up enough money to fly and survive in California. I currently only have $3,000 saved up. That being said, if this is only an opportunity for interns, I hope I can get a 5 minute Skype call. My username is, you know, an interview with Tom or anyone else on the team to explain how I will add value to the project. Either way, I plan on buying a plane ticket next year just to visit Impact Theory and pitch myself in person. If you have any questions, please email me. Uh, I'll be looking for super cheap apartments near Beverly Hills so I can bike to work. This is part of my no bullshit what would it take journey. Thank you, David Kim.
This is gold,
So
man. This is gold.
yeah, I remember I probably spent like hours just like trying to make sure that that email sounded right. But funny thing is, even now, looking back, I don't know if I'd advise people to do the same thing. I mean, it did get the hook, so maybe they should do exactly that. But knowing Tom now, where it's
Yeah.
like you do not want anyone showing up at your house. You do not want
Yeah.
anyone like trying to get an in-person interview, because that'll be like really creepy. So
Yeah.
it's like knowing that now, it's like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. But so I got the response, and then Jared just emailed me back about a month later actually. So I sent that in September, and then in October he responded, "Hi David, do you have time for a 15-minute chat tomorrow? Best, Jared Smith." And that was it. So I was like, I was probably ecstatic. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm literally going to be talking to the marketing director." Um,
That's my shot.
and oh my God, I'm so corny. For my next email, literally on the same day, is like, "Hey, Agent Smith, and yes, I'll be around. I'll be available around there." So I'll be using all the code names that we calling each other in the team. I'm like, I know exactly what you guys call each other. Like I've been watching your content, so I was like, I was a super fan, you know. Um,
That's
so I was
hilarious.
just telling him about my classes and I might need to reschedule and all this type of stuff. And then finally, I guess I gave him my cell phone number, and that's probably when we had our first call. But yeah, I could probably keep going down like the back and forth with the emails. But if I remember correctly, yeah, he just wanted to get to know me a little bit. He saw that I had the mindset,
Yeah.
but he, you know, that position was for a production intern, I believe. And
Okay.
again, I knew nothing about production. So I'm pretty sure, I think he said something about like, oh, we might not have a position for you this semester or whatever, but maybe you should contact me again in the winter.
Hmm.
So I believe that's when I called them.
And
Yeah, so we scheduled another call.
that first email, that was like a year after you were like super active in the Facebook group and stuff, or was that?
It was probably maybe 6 months in,
Hmm.
because by that time I probably already went through all of their content. Maybe a year. I'm not exactly sure the time frame, but yeah, I was quite familiar with all of their content. So this is when I'm making the first jump. This is when I'm starting to plan out like my financial situation. So like if they accepted literally that day, I'll be able to like plan something. So I had all my plan ready in a sense. Let me see. And then I emailed a follow up from last year. So it's now been a year. So I don't think I got any callback from getting that internship. And then I asked again this time for a summer internship in 2018. Um, yeah, keeping up to date. Let me go through a little bit more. So this is I remember this one. This is when I hit my first like wall in this process, which was I finally emailed Jared again, excited for another call, about to basically confirm the internship, and then Jared says that he's going to be moving on from Impact Theory. So my
Dude.
biggest contact, who was going to get me into the door, get into the internship, is leaving Impact Theory.
That's so funny because the exact same thing happened to me. I actually got an interview with Tom. So like I flew to LA and like went to the house and stuff and had an interview, and it was just
Wow.
like I think they were just like maybe eight or nine on the team. And I didn't know at the time, but like the interview went super well and stuff. I came back and like a couple of days later I got an email from Jared like we will be unable to offer you this internship. But like with no information. I think I followed up like 8 times. I was like, wait, no, like this is
Why?
literally the
Tell me
only
why
place
you
I want to
rejected
work
me.
at, And like I had no clue what was going on. I learned up a couple months later, like through Will, that like he had like moved on. But I was so bummed, man. I thought I was done. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I relate heavily to that. I was looking through if there's anything more interesting in the emails, but that was basically it. Like my biggest contact left me. And at least for me, I was lucky. I knew why the thing fell off,
Yeah.
I wasn't in the dark like you, but so that's when I just went back into the Facebook group, kept active because either way, I still like the community. I would have still stayed engaged. Um, but I think actually one thing that made me pop up in their radar in person. So this is where I'm just talking to one person, right, Jared, and Jared's now leaving. But now I think during that Facebook group, I made one piece of art where it was Tom in a superhero suit as on the cover of a comic book. So I made a
Mm.
custom comic book cover because I knew this is when they were starting to talk about comic books. And so I just drew him as a superhero on a comic book. And then so I don't know if like someone messaged me or something, but I think Sean did, where Sean was like, "Oh, like everyone in the team like saw that piece of art, like we shared it across the team, like this is so cool that someone made this in the Facebook group."
Who did you?
So I was
Oh,
like,
oh, you
"Yes,
put it in the Facebook group. Gotcha.
yeah, I think so. I did that, and I also posted it on my Instagram and tagged Tom and a few other people. So somehow it got passed around into the team. So I was just like, oh my god, like yes, they know my name. Oh my god, now I'm remembering that was also around the time they did the I don't know if it was in 2018, I think so, where they did a competition where they made a video and they said like whoever has the most amount of comments on the video, like saying that person's name. So like, if I wanted me to win, I would have my friends watch the video, then comment David sent me here or something.
Mm.
Um, and man, I wish I could find this video, but basically, yeah, they were doing a competition for like the IT community, I guess. And like first place was like you literally get to fly to Impact Theory and get like a 1 day with them. And I was like, oh my God, I need first place. Like that is the time where I can now pitch myself in person. I can do all these things. And then second place is like you get like I don't know, like $100 worth of like IT merch and like Alexa Dot and all this cool stuff. But I was like, who
Like
gives a
fuck
fuck
that.
about that? I only care
Yeah.
about yeah. It's just like first place or who cares? Like that's all that matters. And so yeah, like that was when I was fully invested into making this internship work. I was like, all I care about is now getting this job. So during college, like this is where I'm still going to classes, club, and everything. And this video came up, and I was like, I literally went onto my Facebook, and I'm pretty sure I bothered everyone. Like I'm sure if you're on Facebook, you once in a while get this message where like someone wants you to do something, but you haven't talked to them in like 5 years,
Yeah.
and like so that was me. I was that person. Like I was talking to people from like fucking elementary school from like Hawaii. Like if you still remember me, please like just comment my name in this video. And so this is where I was like, I know this is terrible because all I'm doing is right hooking everybody. Like I
Yeah.
have not jabbed at them for like years, and now I'm right hooking everyone. But I'm like, I literally need this. So yeah, I try to. So the one thing I did that was not a right hook, but like made the at least the right hook feel a little bit better is I would make a custom message for each person that I was messaging. It
Okay.
wasn't like a copy paste like email out to everybody. I was literally typing their name, our memories, and like why this was important to me and all this type of stuff. And man, my hand was so tired like after that week because I was just like messaging everyone individually on
How many
Facebook.
people do you think you messaged? I was like,
Probably like 500.
holy
Um,
shit.
so
It's
I
literally
did
like
that, and
all
then
your friends on Facebook.
literally all my friends on Facebook. And the thing was, yeah, so I did that. And then every day I'm checking the video, like to see who else is commenting. Because obviously I can see my comments, but I could literally see every other person's comment saying, this person sent me here, this person sent me here. And then I was just like, there's this, I think it was Ayan and some other person, where it was just like, how are they getting so many comments? Like, this is impossible. And then I found one of the accounts, because I tried to stalk them too. I was like, who are these people? Who's my competition,
Yeah.
right? And one of them had like, I think like 15 or 20,000 people on Instagram following them. And I was like, dang it. Like I only had like 300 people following me on like Instagram. And I was like, oh gosh, like I probably already lost, like they're literally blasting it out to their fans, and they get to just make it. And then, I could have just, I guess, given up back then. But instead I was like, all right, now it's like, I literally am on campus with 25,000 other students. All right, what's my game plan here? So I tried to get in contact with, was I in SGA by then? I don't think I was, but basically I was like, what contacts do I have in like the higher government of UNT? First of all, I doubt they would even email blast every student, but that was like my thought. I was like, okay, if I get close chummy with like some governor in like the UNT, they'll email blast out this video for me. So that was like the high end, right? But then my mid to low end was like, all right, I literally would buy like a shit ton of like candy, and I would just walk around the library giving people candy if they scan this QR code that led to the video. So I custom made a QR code for the video at a print shop, and I'll just be passing these around. And then I also would go to my favorite teachers and be like, can you just post this on your backboard, and like have students like take a picture of it after like class to like, I'll just try everything to get anyone into that. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it ended.
Did you win?
And so this is where we get the prize. No, I won second place. And so I know the one place, it's second place feels worse. I always heard, because it's like you're one step away, but if you're third place, you're like, at least I got in, but yeah, so I probably, but luckily, if I look at the stats, I'm sure someone else had like probably 1,000 names commented in that video. I probably only had 500 names commented in that video. So I was still lucky that, I won second place. Only after I met Will and like got the job and everything did Will tell me there was some bug in choosing the winners, because he thought that I should have won first place, because I don't know, something about it where like the random generator wasn't really working. So because like the first place person won, but they only got voted like 5 times or something. So the person who won first place didn't even have the most amount of votes.
Oh, what?
Like they were just
it was like entries.
lucky.
Like every name was an entry. Gotcha.
Exactly. Every name was an entry.
Dude.
So from a number standpoint, it's like me and probably that one other person who had like a few hundred votes should have won. But yeah, so that's kind of how it worked. I got my cool Alexa Dot. I had my merch. But I was like, this is not what I want,
Consolation prize.
Yeah. I was so greedy, I guess. But yeah, that's but at least by then it was so exciting, because like Christopher, Jared, and like I think Tom at that time, they're like going through that video and reading the names that they kept on seeing, and they're like, who's this David person? They keep showing up. And I was like, oh my god, Tom knows my name. Like Tom has said my name.
This is the second time like your name kind of comes out like multiple times, right?
Exactly. Now the thing is, I actually don't think Tom knew that it was the same person who made the drawing versus who did the competition. But to a little bit fast forward, that was like kind of what was happening. And then was it in 2019? I'm not exactly sure, but again, Facebook group, blah blah blah. Will contacts me out of nowhere. Basically, he messaged me on Facebook saying, yo, I saw that you have a clothing brand. We actually have a merch line on Impact Theory. Would you be interested in like helping me with that? And I was like, oh damn, like of course. Like, I was still looking for an internship. I was still trying to plan something out.
And you guys had been messaging a good amount at this point, right? You said you had already DM'd him a little.
Yeah, I think a couple times. Because I think he was probably the next closest person to Jared, because they were both in the marketing team. Mm-hmm. So he probably heard about him, because Jared was saying he's going to pass on the information to the next person and all this type of stuff. So I think that's where Will heard about like my want to be at an internship. He also saw me messaging in the Facebook group, saw that I messaged him a few times. So yeah, like that's where he contacted me. We got on a call probably for an hour, explaining like what my responsibilities would actually be, what I wanted to do, just to get a feel for my personality. And yeah, by the end of the call, he offered me an internship, and he was just like, yeah, you want to come over? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, sure. Like, when do you want me to come? And like, I will always remember this. And And the funny thing is, this is when I'm meeting Will. Will is actually like a year or two younger than me. So I was like, oh my God, if this guy, made it in here, anyone can, like, we can all do this. I was super excited. And he's just like, yeah, come in tomorrow. And and he just like flat out dropped that because I was asking like, oh, when can I come in? He's like, come in tomorrow. I'm
And
like,
you're in
oh,
Texas, right?
yeah.
What the
I'm like, oh,
fuck?
I'm in Texas, right? Like, you understand, I can't just literally come tomorrow. But I was so excited. So I asked him, hey, can I have about 2 weeks to tell my parents that I'm basically going to be leaving them? Tell my girlfriend at the time that I'm basically going to be leaving her for a bit. Can I tell at least like drop out of my college for a little bit? So I was trying to still plan around this where it's like, you know what? I don't want to like drop everything. So I was like, let's plan this for the summer. So this is around the close end of the first school year, or yeah, sophomore year. This is when sophomore year is ending. So we're about to hit summer. So I was like, give me 2 weeks until we hit August so I could be in my summer break. And I'll do, internship for about 2 to 3 months. And then I can always go back into college if I need. And so I needed that so I could convince my parents to let me, fly over. I was like, hey, I'm not gonna drop everything. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna do all these great things.
And
So
this
that's
was
kind
like
of our
an offer for 90 days, right?
yes. This is internship. Funny thing is, I don't actually this worked because I was in college and I could be offered up for internship. So I think it was for a marketing internship. So officially it was titled as a marketing internship. And I was gonna give the same pitch anyways. Like I knew the instant I walked into that house, I was gonna shake Tom's hand and be like, "Hey, like I know you don't know me, but I'm gonna work harder, strong, like faster, like harder than anyone else you've ever met for 3 months." Blah blah blah. Like I would give that whole pitch at a
Hmm.
down flat at the time, and I was like, I'm just gonna literally just shout this verbatim to him. Um, and so that's when I got all my finances together. I looked at how much money I had, and this is the time where because Will's call kind of came out of nowhere. I was still like, I guess this is kind of over. I'm still gonna, keep in contact with them to see if any other future internships are coming in, but time to go back into the clothing business. So at that time, me and my brother probably saved around like close to $5,000 for the next launch, and we're
Hmm.
gonna do this like massive launch, really kick the next year up. But then once I got that message from Will, I was like, you know what? We're only gonna spend $2,000 on this launch. We're not gonna risk all $5,000. We're gonna make $2,000 worth of clothing and try to sell that for some profit so I can have some extra cash so I could go over to California at the time. So I think we made a few. I don't know if we made like $700 in profit, but so I made my money back plus like extra $700. So again, brought me around like $5,000 in total. This is when again I was looking at all Airbnbs, looking for the cheapest ones. And because it was the summer, my cousin also had free time. And he's like, you know what? I've always wanted to go to LA. I always wanted to dance. Like this is like the dream chance. So now I had someone to come with me. I think that put my parents at ease that I wouldn't be all alone in California. So yeah, like we literally looked for the cheapest Airbnb. We found one in Korea run by two Russian people. That I didn't speak English that much, but it was like the cheapest one. I think it was like for 1 month of rent, it was like $500 for each person. And obviously in California, that's like hella
That's
cheap.
pretty good, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So once we got there, we understood why it was so cheap. Uh, but
Cockroaches everywhere and
yeah. So do you want me to just keep going on about like moving there, getting our first interview, all this, or is there any questions you
yeah.
have? So
Yeah, go for it.
okay. So yeah, got our finances orders in order. We got the plane tickets, fly over there, hit up the Airbnb, and that's when we see that it's like a 5 bedroom house, so it's quite large. But what they were trying to do is they were putting 6 people into each bedroom. So this is where you have like 3 bunk beds in like a probably like a 10 by 10 like area in a sense. So it was hella packed. And what was exciting is this is my first time being in LA in a long time because I lived in California, but more in Orange County, never got into the city. So I was in Koreatown. We're in this like really ghetto looking like Airbnb. There's like bars up on the windows, all that type of stuff. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be exciting next 3 months. Um, and so yeah, we got set up. We had our bunk beds. I got the bottom bunk. They had like a small curtain. Like that was literally your room. Like
Dude, it's an
your bed was your
adventure.
yeah, I wish I actually do have some pictures. I actually have a video of like that place on my Facebook somewhere. So if I find that, I'll send that to you.
Word.
But it was a lot of fun. I still remember like some of the people we met because that was definitely one of the coolest experiences. I'm sure like not a lot of people could do that because again, you're literally sharing 2 bathrooms with like 25 people. But that's also where it's like I actually remember when I first got to Impact Theory, the first thing I asked was, "Yo, this is a house. It has a lot of showers. Can I like shower in these showers?"
Did they say yes?
Yeah, Tom said yes.
Oh
So
wow,
yeah, so yeah, so it was funny that
that's
that's kind
hilarious.
of how I started living in a sense. Like I literally was working, or I was living in an Airbnb, in a cramped Airbnb. My bunk bed was my room basically, and then I would go to this mansion that had like 12 bathrooms in a sense or whatever the case was, and that was like quite the. It was funny thing is I don't think I was that shocked by that decadence in a sense. It was just like cool. This is a cool place to work. This is cool people. I just saw it as like another office in a sense.
Was it?
Um,
Because I remember like for me the first day I pulled up, I was like, holy shit! Like you're really like you're so impressed at first and like intimidated. But for me, after like a week, you kind of get used to it, and you're like, oh
for
yeah,
sure.
there's just another office,
Yeah,
you know.
the
But
hedonic
like
treadmill is
even in the
completely.
beginning, was it just like just normal for you?
Um, hmm. That is a good question. I'm trying to remember how I felt. Well, first of all, yeah, those two doors always give you an
Yeah,
impression because they're like giant doors. You're like, what the hell? I've never seen doors like that. But I
yeah,
think I've always something about like how my parents taught me about money
yeah,
always had me kind of like humble or just look at life very straight on. And but there has been times when I was in Texas, like I had a friend who was quite wealthy, and he had like a three bedroom house or like three-story house and everything. Like he just had like all the cool knickknacks that I couldn't understand. Like he had all the Xboxes, he had all the new controllers. So that's when I was like really like, oh my God, like they have all the coolest thing a kid would ever want. But after that, it was kind of like, cool, like I can get this.
yeah.
Like I could like
It's
if I
just a
work hard
question
enough,
of
I'm sure
time,
this is
yeah.
all possible. Um,
So
but
did you
no, for sure.
like your first day, did you give that pitch to Tom in the end or
I'm trying to remember. I remember that I was kind of nervous, but he just kind of greeted me at the door. Like we just shook hands, said a quick hello, and then
yeah.
he went back to work. In a sense, I don't know if I had a chance to really sit down with him. Um, I remember one of the first sit downs we had was again like the team meeting, and then like afterwards we had like a marketing pitch talking about like the closing and everything. That's when I really started talking to him about my dream here and everything. Um, but yeah, I remember probably the first real conversation I had with him was one where I was telling him why I wanted this internship, right? And I was like, if I'm being honest, like I want to get a job here, but at the same time, my ultimate goal is to build my own like studio and all this type of stuff. And I said, I'm gonna continue working here as long as you're the right CEO to work here. And that's kind of what I said. It's like if you act like the right CEO that I would want to be like, then I'm gonna continue working here. And I think yeah, that was one of our first conversations. So that was kind of the mindset I had going into this. And then for the next like couple weeks, I saw him. Obviously, he walked in and out around all the place, but I didn't really get to talk to him. It was mainly just me and Will working on the marketing stuff. Um, but then, I think you're around that time when it switched into the comic. That's when like the reel started ramping up.
Mhm.
And that's when we were sitting around at lunch and Lisa like was talking to me about art because she liked art. And then she was mentioning the piece that I made for Tom, and then Tom overheard the conversation. He's like, "Wait, you're the kid who made the piece like
Oh, you
two
didn't
years ago
realize
or like a
before?
year ago?" Yeah, and that's when that switch really happened, where he's like, "Oh my God, like you do art. We have like art division." Immediately gets transferred from marketing into the art division, and that's when he made that whole speech about like he's stealing me from Will and all that type of stuff. Uh,
Will must have been so pissed.
I know that happened to him like so many times with you and
Yeah.
with other.
Yeah, I mean that's the funny thing. Like I think that's kind of like something to keep in mind like for people that want like a job like this or like they want to work for a company like this or for a creator is like just get your foot in the door, and then like things kind of seem to work out.
That's very true. I think it's like the type of people, because it's obviously a rigorous process to even get your foot into the door. So like kind of once you're in the door, it's like if you allow yourself to really, work hard and show your work ethic and everything, like you're probably the right person to continue working there in a sense. It's like
Mhm.
I've heard the same similar stuff about like really hard to get into universities where it's like funny thing is the reason why dropouts do well is not because they went through because obviously they didn't finish college. It's because whatever qualifications they had to get even accepted is what is going to make them successful in a sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, even if you were rejected, or if you dropped out, like you still have the same capabilities anyway versus if you did it or not. So I
Yeah,
think
and once
very
you're inside, like when in like fast growing companies like that, there's just so many opportunities like popping here and there, and it's like there's, I mean, you just have to seize them, and like be ready.
Yeah, I think funny thing is working here now, like we see those people like hammering on doors trying to get in and put their foot into the door and like all the unique stuff they do to do that, like cool custom made cards. Literally, someone sent us a tire.
Dude, that was
Yeah.
cool.
So it's just like there's many different ways to get into the door. But the biggest thing for me that I found was helpful is make sure that your selfish desires align. Um, Tom always talks about that, but I
Yeah.
remember, even first coming into Impact Theory, the only reason I wanted to come in is because for me, it felt like I was going to get free education. Like, that's why it's like, even if they didn't pay me, even if, nothing good happened afterwards, it's like, I still got what I wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
worst case scenario, I go back to Texas with exactly what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was going to be the connections and the knowledge, right? And
Yeah,
that's
it's
exactly
super
what Tom
important.
pitches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So luckily, it turned out to be more than that. I remember once I got transferred into the art division. That's Tom calls it like our 2 weeks in Paris or whatever. But it was amazing. Like I literally sat next to him
The honeymoon.
side by side for like probably like 15 hours a day. Like literally just like sitting next to him, like crouched up on my laptop and I was probably still using my like $200 laptop or something to like draw all this like first neon future concept art.
Was it just you? Like who was it just you in the comic division? Like were you the
Yeah, it was
first
just
person?
me, and I think it was
Holy
Casey,
shit.
but I'm not sure. Yeah, because we didn't have any like. Actually, we started to have like we started hiring the Marvel people, to do the pencils and all that.
Yeah.
'Cause they're basically starting production, but
Dude,
they were
that's
starting
why I had
production
no
without.
idea that you were like the first person in the comic division.
I still don't want to say I would say Casey's probably the first one, but like from a creative like
Yeah.
in-house person, yeah, probably I was the first one.
Okay. So you guys were
To come
like
in.
just mocking up concepts with Tom for like those 2 weeks, right? During the
Yeah.
honeymoon phase.
Yeah, actually, was it 2 weeks or more? Because it felt much longer. Because I felt like I really got to know him as a person, just like his work ethic. Because like I thought I was working crazy hard, coming in super early, and he's still up already. Yeah, I was just like, what the hell? Like, I don't think. And again, when I tell this story, I tell it in a way to like tell people or inspire them in a way of like, if you find that exact thing you want, and again, selfish desires align, it's like the best thing ever. Where it's like, for me, I was working those like 12 to 15-hour days every single day for like probably those last month and a half, 2 months, just straight. I was
Yeah.
probably putting in again 100 hours a week for about almost like 2 months. And for me, it didn't feel crazy. Like I was literally sleeping probably like 6 to 7 hours, waking up, taking an Uber. And at that point, that was like the best thing because like back then, I was walking to a bus stop, getting a bus, like to walk up to Mulholland, like all this like crazy stuff, and then I'll meet up with Will so we can get an Uber like for 5 minutes. It's like all that traffic and everything got figured out because Tom was just like, all right, if you're gonna work here, and again, because you're technically working all for free and everything, he's just like, I'll pay for your food and I'll pay for your rides and all this type of stuff. So that was like, oh
Nice.
my god, like blessing, like I'm getting so much more. And then I get to shower in the bedroom downstairs where you're working with comics. I'll come in with my towel and like I'll just shower and yeah. So that for me it
It's
was
pretty
like
much like
a vacation. I was like,
Facebook.
yeah. So for me, it didn't even. I mean, obviously it was work because putting a lot of time, you're still putting a lot of mental energy into all this, but it really felt like a fun vacation. Like I
Yeah.
was like, I literally get to work in a mansion, you know, shower, get the best food because I get to just order out Chipotle, like all this. It was just a lot of fun. So yeah, that's kind of that's really how it started. Um,
That's
I mean, there's a
wild.
lot more details again into. Um, I wish, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't want to like downplay the sacrifice
Hmm.
portion of it because as much as fun it was, I think for a normal person, if you're really trying to think about this, it's like you're basically leaving your family, you're leaving your
Yeah.
girlfriend, you're leaving your college, all for a risk of like going to a new state, a new like company that you don't really know. Like there is a lot of risk to this. So that is one thing when I tell like general people, it's like I actually don't recommend people to do what I did,
Mhm.
only because again, I feel like you have to really understand your risk reward and you have to be okay with the worst case scenario. I think most people when they hear about our stories, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll do this. I'll obviously get the job. I'll obviously get all these things." Like they're almost setting themselves up for like a thing bigger than what they were actually going in for.
Mm-hmm.
And because I continuously, even though I was getting very hyped, I was like, you know what? I think I'm really putting in the work. I really think there's a job at the end of this. I was also reminding myself like, yo, there might not be, and just be ready to go back home. And so, that's kind of the thing I would say where, yeah, just know your selfish desires, understand your risk and reward. But I guess for the right person, even that won't stop them. Even if I tell them all the risk, if they know what they want, they'll go after it. And
Totally.
again, those are the people who are gonna make it.
So
So yeah,
okay,
that kind
so
of brings the first chapter.
yeah, that's the first chapter. Let's say first 90 days, right? Pretty much.
Yep.
I guess your internship got prolonged. I don't know how you say that, but like it got extended after. Right? It was because
Yep.
I don't think you were getting paid for a little while, right? After that, you kept doing unpaid, or
Yeah, a
did you
couple
get paid
weeks, I
after?
would say.
What's that?
Yeah, for a couple weeks.
After the 90
But the thing
days?
is, yeah, so it's like after the 3 months was coming to an end, Tom basically pulled me aside. This is where I was like kind of nervous because I didn't know what was happening because it could have been like, all right, now go home or like you get to stay. So he just locks the door, or he didn't lock the door, but he just closes the door behind him and he's like, hey, I've been really amazed by the work you've been putting in, blah, blah, blah. So he gives the whole spiel and he's like, so I want to offer you a position here. I'll tell you, I'm still talking to Lisa about what your salary number is going to be or whatever. But at that point, I didn't even care. I was like, bro, I got
Like,
a
I'll
job
take
here. I can
whatever.
stay in Cali. Yeah, I
I'll
was just
take the
like, bro, whatever
$7
it is. Exactly.
Taco
I'll
Deli.
find a
Yeah.
way to work side jobs to stay here or whatever. Like again, that's where it's like I was learning so much during that period. And again, just being around the same energy, like people like you, people like Johnny, people like Will, and like all this young, talented energy. Not saying that all the other people aren't young, because there's always that joke of like there's like the under 30 crowd and the over 30
Dude,
crowd. Obviously from them, like Christopher and all that, I get to
That's funny.
I got to talk to him, and you get so much experience and the stories they have over like the decades of like
Oh, yeah.
Hollywood and learning. It's crazy. So again, everything I wanted was there, which is again, you get to work, you get to learn, and you get to get the connections. The relationships was amazing. So yeah, if anything, that is one thing I would say. Like connections feel like a very like businessy thing, but it's just like you're building relationships. That's what you're really building.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was super awesome. And so yeah, there's definitely this like limbo period where I was like I was hired, but I also don't know exactly what I was doing because there was no like official documents to sign. There was no like this is exactly your job position. This is exactly what you're doing. And funny thing is that actually, I mean, we're kind of now past the quote unquote startup phase.
Yeah.
But that was kind of what it was, right? It's like everything's like changing super quickly. You have to be able to wear multiple hats. And even now, like I notice myself as we're like scaling, I still want to be in that position where I'm able to wear multiple hats, where I'm able to switch. And if I find an idea cool here, I was able to chase that and everything. So yeah.
But so I guess they were building the comic team, right? So at some point, like Kendon came in.
Yep.
I forget who came in after that.
I would say Kendon was our second official hire. Other than the freelancers that we're doing, but the in-house hire is Kendon and then Abe.
Mm-hmm.
Abe became the art director right after.
And you were a colorist, right?
Yes. So that was officially I believe like the title or like the job description where it's like you're gonna make comics mainly to color comics, and it's very interesting. Like again, like I never expected myself to go back all year round from elementary school all the way to now, where it's like I'm working in comics again. But it's cool to kind of see that through line.
Yeah, I was gonna say like you were flipping comics in kindergarten, right? In primary school,
Yeah,
and it's full circle.
And this is again now that as I'm in this industry and I'm still learning from like reading books and all that. One of them, I don't know if you've heard of him, but Naval.
Yeah.
Naval Ravikant, super amazing person, right? Like everything he tweets is like a piece of nugget of gold.
Yeah.
And that's what I really felt like. Like you could learn by yourself, and for me that was like, especially on the internet, it's like 99% of stuff on the internet is just BS, right? It's like someone's trying to sell you snake oil, or someone's trying to like tell you how they worked for them, but it's not going to work for like 90. So it's just like I'll be swimming and digging down, and finally after like hours and hours you will be able to find a treasure trove with like one nugget in it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that nugget, you just hold it, you're like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you use that wisely. You about to say something?
No, go for it.
So yeah, that's what I felt like with working with Tom and with everyone there. The videos itself were like a treasure trove of those nuggets, and then obviously the in-person experience like just hammers that into you. And so one thing,
I was just gonna say, for people that don't have context, why was impact theory making comics?
Yes. Okay. So there's this. So ultimately, the purpose of impact theory is very, again, aligned with improve our lives so that we improve the lives of other. How Tom says it is basically we want to make sure that in this world, no one grows up to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset, right? So that's another thing. A huge part of impact theory is growth mindset. Read Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. That was also another thing. I came across Carol Dweck's book before Tom recommended it. So that's where it's like a lot of the stuff that I was really starting to build my beliefs around was, again, foundational to impact theory. So that's where it felt like, again, selfish desires very definitely align. And so, yeah, to go back to growth mindset, ultimately, there's a few ways to educate people. One is pure education, which is literally why we're building, ITU. Another one is interviews, so like learning from other people, biographies, books, all these type of things. And there's different subsets of the world that kind of gear or lean towards those things. But the biggest one yet is media. So entertainment is like the thing we consume the most, I feel like, out of our life. It's the one that no one has to tell us to consume. We just want to consume it. And so if Tom understood psychology, he's like, you know what? I think there's a way or there's something called soft power. And this is in war. There's, I think it's called hard power, which is, again, literally military might, where it's like you have planes, jets, and bombs. And then there's soft power, which is culture. So you could incept other countries with your culture, and they'll slowly turn onto your side. So Korea has been incepted by soft power from the United States. They're very Western driven. And especially with the Disney's movies, they were the strongest power that the United States had during the Cold War. And all these, like, it's just like, you're able to incept other cultures with our beliefs and values, slowly turning their populace into, someone who can match. Sorry, there's.
Hey, damn, he's cute.
So, sorry for the distraction.
No.
So it's just like that idea of understanding media is probably the strongest way to influence people. So, I don't know if you can truly change people. Like you can't literally like go into their brain and change their wiring or anything, but over time, I think you can influence them. And so, yeah, I think Tom really saw the power of media, especially him growing up, reading comic books, watching The Matrix. He talks about all the movies that impacted him. Again, I think he really just saw it, especially with him obsessed with scale. He could, again, just become a therapist and like help one person one by one. But because of our obsession with scale, it's like, how do we hit the most amount of people possible? And one of them is media. So starting the whole thing with comic books, if you think of it from a business strategy standpoint, is Tom definitely has enough money with, Tom and Lisa have built up a massive wealth to make a movie. But a movie can cost like $100 million to $200 million to $300 million, if not more. And so they can make maybe one movie and then they're out of the game, right? And this is, again, something very important that he says, and every business person is basically saying, is like, never take a risk that'll kick you out of the game. Like never go all in on something unless it's like literally 100% probability.
Yeah.
But especially in the movie industry, for him, it's like a 1 in 20 hit ratio. That's like a 5% chance of winning.
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, you would never want to bet it all on black on a 5% chance of winning. So that's where it's like, what is the easiest form of media to get into without spending all of your treasury on it? And it's like, okay, you can make a comic for basically 1/100th of the price of a movie, or even 1,000th of a price of a movie. And so ultimately, comics are a natural feeder into movies, as we see with Marvel, right? It's literally the biggest film franchise of all time now. And that was built through decades of like layering foundations of the hero's journey, storytelling, through all that. So I think we're just basically using that model. Now our strategy has been shifting over time, where it's still the same model, but we're now trying to build out the full pipeline. I actually don't know how much. If you're curious about that, I could probably talk about it. But yeah, that's kind of how we started with comics, the idea behind it.
Word. All right. Thanks for the overview. That's super useful for people that don't really know. When I look at like your time at Impact Theory, I see like three phases, right? One is kind of like the internship, like hustle phase. Second, I think, is kind of like the colorist phase, like once you kind of had like a stable job and you kind of had a role, right? And it was past the point where you kind of were scared for your job, right? I guess if you can talk a little bit more about that phase as well, like where you were like unsure if you were going to say. And then the third stage is kind of like the stage you're in now, which is like the boss mode after Abe left, and you just took a lot of responsibilities that you didn't have previously, and with all the webtoon stuff. So I guess if you could give like a brief overview of all the milestones along those phases.
Yeah, definitely. Again, appreciate all like the kind words and compliments. I still feel weird about like taking all that because I feel like I still have such a long way to go, but I really appreciate it. It's really cool when other people can see that growth like coming from the outside because from
Oh, it's been
internally,
impressive,
you know,
man.
appreciate it. Um, yeah, so I would say each transition. Funny thing is, I wonder if I can pinpoint exactly when the transitions happen, and I think you did them extremely well. Like from the inside, I don't know how much transition there really was, but now when you zoom back out,
Yeah.
you can see like at what points did that change. And so obviously the first easiest one to pinpoint is like when you first get offered the job. The second one is when you're trying to like find your gripping now on like where do I actually fit within this team? It's like what kind of value do I actually give? And obviously colorist is the first easy one, and that's where it's like again I'm literally learning on the job. Like I don't think people understand like when I got the internship as a artist. First it was marketing intern, and then 2 weeks later I'm now an artist in the comic division. I'm literally looking at YouTube videos on how to make concept art while doing concept art. And, like Tom's sitting
That's
right
so
next to me.
good.
Like he doesn't care. He's just like, are you able to learn on the job? Are you able?
Yeah.
Like he, if anything, he praises that. He's like, oh, you're able to just like teach yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big thing. If you can show people that you don't need to take like direction and they have to like plan out every single like step. And again, for me, that was again dream come true, right? Even in college, I was like, I don't like how it's like step by step. Like let me just take in the knowledge I actually want to take in. So that phase definitely still that kind of thinking still kept into the colorist phase because again, I've never colored comics before. I've made my own fan art and stuff like that, but I've never actually went through a production pipeline of like what to do when the inker sends you inks and how to separate the layers and all. So it's just like learning that process was very interesting. And then especially when we got Kendon coming in, now it's like, oh, cool, we can make even more art. We can do all this stuff. And then Abe came in. It's like, cool, now we actually have structure. We actually have, again, a clean pipeline. We have a producer who's able to talk to the art director, who's able to talk to us, give us direction. All this is to say is at that phase when Abe came in, that's when I knew.
And he was
Oh
the
my God.
director, the artistic director.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So this is when I knew I wasn't shit in a sense. Where it's just like this person is coming in with like 10 years, decades worth of like industry knowledge of the gaming world and the art world. And just looking at, funny thing is when I looked at his portfolio, I wasn't blown away. I was just like, oh, it's good. It's good. But then seeing him work is just a whole nother thing. It's like, it's very interesting because especially in the art world, like if you want to be respected, you have to be good at art. You can, be a director and a manager, but it's like people aren't going to really follow you if they don't actually think your art is good. And so when I just saw his portfolio, I was like, this is definitely good. It's definitely better than mine. But I'm like, I feel like I could reach that. I can do that in a couple years. But then when you see them work, and it's like all the shortcuts, all like the just the ingrained knowledge of like decades worth of experience, it's like you can't compare.
Yeah.
And so one thing is their eyes. So in art, for me, I always feel like there's your hands and then there's your eyes. So your hands is literally the skill level that you can tactically do something, and your eyes is what can you see in a sense, because your hands follow your eyes in a sense. So I wish I want to give this concretely, but basically when you're looking at a painting, a really good artist can understand way more than like a beginner level artist. In the same way that when I was doing dance, maybe my first year in, you're running into the Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you know everything. You're like, oh, I'm the best dancer ever. Like people's giving me compliments and everything. And then, you crash into the valley of despair when you find out there's like people 10 times better. And that was my valley of despair. I thought I was pretty good at art. I got this job, I like everyone gave me compliments in college. And then literally this art director comes in. He's like, everything you're doing right now is shit, basically. Right? Obviously Abe was incredibly nice. He would say that. But just by showing his work, and then able to give constructive criticism, I'm like, oh my God, there's such a gap. And what I felt afraid of was my eyes can't even see what he's trying to tell me. Like he's telling me, make sure you do this lighting here, this, that. And I was like, I literally cannot understand what you're trying to tell me, because what you're telling me is like past like my eye level. I can't even see the image you're trying to paint. So that's where it's like, I had to humble myself and be like, all right, can you step by step literally sit on my computer and like draw me the exact same thing? And I would just like stare at that. And I was like, can I screen record this? Can I like, and I would go back home, look at it over again. And like, so that's kind of like that process. And this is where that transition was happening. I'm learning really fast. I feel like I'm exploding in my growth as an artist. But then this is where the hammer comes down in a sense. And this is probably a few months in. So we're like close to each other. I like Kendon, I like Abe, I like everybody working in the comics division. We feel like a tight knit team. And then I think Abe was talking to us when we were going out to lunch. We would always go on these like weekly lunches together. And I think he was just mentioning that he was going to have to talk to Tom about what solution we can bring, because our comic division isn't able to hit the quality that we need to hit, right? So ultimately, he's saying that me and Kendon aren't good enough colors to stay on the job, basically, right? So I was just like, damn. But and he's just like, I'm gonna have to talk to Tom about this. And again, this is a core, thesis to who Impact Theory is we got to be transparent, fully honest. And I really appreciated that. But obviously, now my anxiety levels are
yeah.
like, oh,
I left everything in Texas for this, and now it's
and
like
it's just like our art director's like, yeah, the people you hired on this team before me, they're not good enough.
they just
So
learned
we're
on
probably gonna
YouTube,
have
man.
yeah. Um, Gosh, so I go home. I go into my Airbnb and pull in my curtain. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do with my life? It's just like it seems like I'm gonna lose this job right after. And I told and this is where it's like I call my family. It's like, oh, I landed this job. Like I'm gonna be here for a while. I had to call my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, hey, I know we said we're gonna like get married one day and all this, but this job is really gonna help build that. And I was just telling them all about like the future plans that kind of hinge on this job now. And then now it's like, do I like call them and tell them that this might all be for not, because at that point I believe I already dropped out of college, because I was like, I'm not going to go into my my next year. So coming to, actually no, I think that was when I finished junior year. So I forget it was sophomore or junior, but basically I only had actually one more year of college left, and I basically dropped out then, right? So it's just like I was basically now in California doing this job, trying to meagerly save up stuff. But I was using all my money now to pay off the college debt, because at that time I had probably 8K of debt because I didn't have to finish college, and I was just using all my money to pay that off. And I was just like, oh my god, I don't have not too much savings left and everything. So it was in a weird like period of time where it's like jobs kind of on the hinge, and in my mind I was like, well, I guess all I got to do is like literally, as fast as I was growing then, I got to make it parabolic now. Like I have to like like my whole life. And this is, I kind of miss that feeling of just like you either work or you're like gone. And that just that pressure that like I feel like I almost like that pressure. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I don't know,
it's like you feel like it matters, right? It's like you have like a true purpose.
Yes, it gives you another level of purpose in a sense. It's like your livelihood. I know technically worst case scenario is, again, always plan for worst case scenario. I can always just fly back to Texas. I can work at my dad's job again and scrape my way back up into all these different things. I've always had side plans, but like this really felt like I really need to make this work. And so it was really nice to again have another like fire lit under your ass. And that really came when Abe, again, he talked to Tom, and then Tom sat all of us down in the comics room, and we just had like an hour discussion of like what the plan was, right? So he's like, what culture impact there is like, we're going to be honest with you, we're going to be transparent, but we're also going to keep very high standards, right? So it's like, if you're not able to meet those standards, we're going to give you a runway to get good, right? And to be able to meet those standards, we're not going to just like punch you out just because you're not able to hit it right now. But by the end of that time period, if you're not able to hit that, or if you choose rather not to continue on that path, like no hard feelings, we'll say our goodbyes, we'll try to set you up for something in the future. And so in my head, already going into that, I was like, no, I'm not quitting. I'm gonna take all the notes I can. So during that meeting, I had my notepad out while Tom was saying, I'm asking questions like, what exactly do you feel like I need to improve on? What exactly do I need to do? And yeah, I think that like Tom, now that obviously I'm still here now, he remembers that time where he saw me with my notebook out during that moment, like trying to figure out exactly what I can do to actually make it. So yeah, in the next few months, I think he gave us around 2 months to get to the bar that Abe needed us to be. And again, Abe being as kind as he was, he actually didn't want us to leave. Like he was trying his best, also like spending extra time out of work, like every day, like putting a few hours outside of work time to like really get us good. So I really appreciated that. So without him, like I would have never made it into the artist I am now. So that was kind of that phase.
Word. Yeah, Abe definitely struck me as a great leader, super caring. And
yeah, that's one thing I noticed. Again, another thing where you don't learn from just like learning from the books, you learn from experience of like the different leadership styles people have. I think Tom has a very I don't know what the right word is, but I would say like it feels like a traditional like masculine, aggressive like leadership role, and it's very powerful. I think you can get a lot done then. And then Abe had this more like almost like a maternal instinct where he really cared about us, like as
like
people,
super
like,
nurturing.
Exactly, he really cared about nurture. Obviously Tom has his own way of nurturing us, But he feels like more of a military leader, which I personally like, where it's like it doesn't matter what, get through the obstacles, smash your head through it. And Abe
Mm-hmm.
is more of like he'll hold your hand, like kind of through that process.
Yeah.
But it was awesome to have both in a sense, right? To
Yeah.
experience both. Um,
And so then Abe at some point left after like it was probably like a year, right? A year, 2 years,
yeah, about
a
a
year
year
and a
and a half,
half.
or yeah.
And then that's where in my mind you kind of stepped up because you guys were looking for a new art director, right? But by the way, I don't know if you guys have found one still, but that's been like I want to say 6 months to a year now, right? A year
Yeah, it's been
probably,
over a
right?
year now.
Um, and then you stepped up, and so like what was that like? Yeah.
It feels weird. I can never admit to myself that I took Abe's responsibilities because there's something about like the title of an art director that I know I'm not worthy of at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because again, like what I just said, of artists won't respect you unless your art is good enough to lead them, and my art is like nowhere near the ability to lead anybody.
Yeah.
But one thing I do notice is I still have some communication skills. I still have some like logistical abilities. I have some, abilities where I could take up some of his other things, even if my art might not hit the ground. But also around this time is when Newell kind of came in. As Kendon left, Newell kind of took that position, and he was also someone who had probably like five years in the art industry. So I coming in with like 1 year to 2 years. Now I have two seniors, and now that Kendon left, I'm the only person who's like the worst person in the room, right? And I know that can probably like hurt people ego wise and everything, but I'm sure it did. I was like, oh, I used to be the only art person, and is the person that Tom always came to for like advice and everything. But now it's like I'm the last person he would go to for advice. So losing that position, I'm sure, hurt a little bit. But also, I was like, again, I literally found like two new art teachers, like, and now I can like harangue them with questions like every hour of the
And
day.
you were.
Yeah.
I remember.
So it's just like always seeing like depending on your personality, like yeah, it would change. Like, do you feel like you lost a position or do you feel like you gained something? And
Mm-hmm.
again, always having that mentality where it's like I'm always gaining, even when I'm losing, I'm gaining something. And so yeah, the resources were amazing from them. And yeah, so as Abe decided to transition out, um, like we're like okay, now our goal is we need an art director because as we found out, like there's a lot of things that just me and Nuo can't take care of, especially like taking care of the outsourced artists, managing them, building out again art direction of a whole project. Um, I never learned that. Abe always kind of took care of the art direction. I would always like ask him questions of like what exactly the decisions you're making here and there, so we could understand. And again, Abe being a great leader, he was always he also had no ego in the sense of like he's trying to protect his position. He's like, I'm trying to teach you guys exactly what you guys need because I told him like I'm coming for your job, like I want to be the art director. And he's like, cool, like let me teach you how.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember having those like coffee side like discussions during lunch where it's like, as a leader, how do you feel like if your subordinate becomes better than you? Like, how do you
Mm-hmm.
take care of that?
Yeah.
And we would have those discussions of like, he's like, it's kind of like when your son becomes taller than you or stronger than you or anything like that. It's like kind of that weird feeling of like, are you still the man of the house? Are you still like all this type of stuff? But it's just like, hey, like we all respect. If we all have the same goal, we don't care who's in the lead. We just care about the person who will best take us there in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved again being able to have just open discussions like that where I feel like in most companies again I've never really truly worked in any other like big company, I worked at Burger King and all that, but that was always as a line chef or something
Yeah.
like that, where I always heard about like politics and like backstabbing or like you can't like talk about like who's getting a raise or who's doing all this, but it's like I can literally talk to the person I'm trying to gun for the job and be like, how do I get your job in a sense.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just it was super amazing to have people to work like that.
Do you feel
And so
Sorry, just to cut you off quickly. Do you feel like you were able to learn way faster in this environment where you're like working directly with them than you would have if, like, let's say you had gone to like work for a big video game company or something like that?
that is interesting. Obviously, it's hard to say because I've never worked for a big video game
Yeah.
company, but I think I would say they offer two different things. At a startup, depending on your personality, if you like structure and stability, you're not going to get there. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get that at a startup. You'll have some of it, but there won't be too much bureaucracy. It feels very flat in a sense. It feels like anyone can again wear a hat and take care of it. But also you might not like that. You might not like the fact that all I want to do is concept art, but now I have to take care of like answering email from this one outsource artist, or I got to now look for a recruit for this, or I got to take care of some marketing assets here. Um, so for me, it was perfect because I felt like I wanted to learn all parts of it. Um, and again, you have such a close relationship with all rungs of the ladder in a sense. I could talk to Tom about a question, and then I could talk to Abe, and I could talk to Will. Like it just didn't matter. Like you can go to anybody and ask. While I feel like if you were working at some place like Blizzard or Riot or anything like that, there would be quite a few levels of bureaucracy before you can get to the head person. But again, maybe at that place it's like everyone's so good because again the rigorous interview process to even get hired there is so hard that anyone who makes it across is going to be your teacher. And obviously it's like at a bigger company, you're going to get quote unquote more resources. Like you'll have free figure drawing class day and all this type of stuff. So I think there's more amenities there. But I think not a trade-off, but maybe a trade-off is the relationships you build there might be a little bit more shallow because again, it's such a big, large space that it's going to be a little bit hard to build those deeper relationships. But maybe that's also not the case because you're going to have that team. So again, I think the biggest difference between working at a startup like this versus a big company is again, what level of bureaucracy and stability are you going to have? Do you like change? And then also the speed at what you can advance. I think you're right. Like at a startup, because things are growing so fast and because there isn't really much like bureaucracy, you can like jump positions. You can take on responsibilities that quote unquote isn't in your job description.
Yeah.
And you could prove yourself. While at some place like Riot, you're gonna have to ask like, can I take this project? And who do I have to talk to? And then which HR manager do I have to talk? It's just like there's none of that here. And again, for my personality, that fits perfectly. Like I would die under bureaucracy, I feel like.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, so it's like obviously more responsibility, but again, with more responsibility comes with, more opportunities in a sense. So again, I feel like with the right person, you would thrive in both environments. You will find a way to get what you want. But those are some of like the general things to think of before deciding which path to take in a sense.
Yeah, totally. And then you're about to go into like kind of taking on more of a
those responsibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when Abe left, luckily again we're still able to stay in contact with him because again he wasn't just like peace out y'all, like I'm gone forever. He was still trying to look for another job that he could take on. And so during that time, I would be able to call him and be like, hey, like we're running into this problem. How did you solve this problem before? So I was still able to have some training wheels to really mold into that space. And again, with Nuo, he was an amazing help because again, with him, he had more technical art knowledge. So anything that I wasn't able to figure out, I was able to like work with him on that. And then I took on more of the managerial duties in a sense where it's like, you don't need technical art skills. You just need communication ability to, talk to Casey about anything production wise, and then go back into the artist and have enough ability to talk. Because Casey could talk to the artist, but because she doesn't have like the art lingo, like she doesn't know all the words that we use. I was able to become that middleman in the same way that Abe was.
So you're basically project managing like the production of these comics, right?
Yes. So I took kind of over the relationships with the outsourced artists. So again, for me, from a like scope level, it felt like I was taking on something massive in the sense of like, oh my God, I'm literally talking to like Marvel artists who's been in the industry for like 20 years and I'm telling them what to do. Like that feels so weird.
Yeah.
But it really was quick almost like in a week probably. It kind of got into a flow of like, oh, this is just now my job. Like I just have to take care of this. If I don't, like everything will fall to the ground. So it's like, again, goes into, you just have to kind of ramp up and get into that. And again, for me, for other people, it could be like, oh, I can't believe like they didn't have an art director to do all this. For me, I was like, this is exactly what I want, right? Like this is exactly the skills I want to build. Like this is exactly the position I want to be built into. So if anything, I was like, give me more, like teach me more into how to do this. So yeah, so taking on more of the managerial duties, and then for the art direction side, I had a lot of help again from Nuo. So he took care of the color scripting, like again figuring out what the mood and the color and each scene is going to be put, and then I'll make sure that the artists get those resources and then tell them like exactly how to do that. So again, it's funny how like I felt in the past year or two, the same thing that Abe was teaching me. I'm like literally regurgitating what he's telling me to the next artist, right? So it's like learning from them and then being able to pass it on is like the best teacher also, because like while I'm teaching them, I'm also learning of like, oh, like that's how you communicate that, because sometimes like you think you know something until you have to actually simplify it and then tell someone else. So again, throughout this whole process, I just felt like I was like growing leaps and bounds. But recently, I think in this last phase of like taking over those responsibilities, I felt like I was starting to question what exactly I wanted to do. I was like, do I really want to be an art director? Do I really want to be a concept artist? And I think I always saw myself as someone who's like, if I'm going to go after something, I'm going to go after something really hard. And I was just like, if I'm going to go into something with all my, life energy, I want to make sure that's exactly what I want to be doing. So again, like what Tom said, it's like find the exact person who's living the life that you want, and then, work under them and try to figure that out. So obviously Abe was the art director, so I got to, work under him and really learn that. And then Tom is CEO, right? So I was deciding, it's like, do I want to be a concept artist? Because when I first got into the marketing or the comic side, everyone around me was a concept artist. Like when I went into a class on Brainstorm, or when I talked to other art people in the industry, I was like the only comic artist. So I was like, oh, I don't want to be a comic artist. I want to be a concept artist, because I feel like a lot of your desires are molded by, again, the people you have around you, and you want to be respected by the people you respect. And the people I respected were concept artists. So I want to be a concept artist. So I would always be asking Abe, how do I be a concept artist? Ultimately, to become an art director. Because again, to be an art director, I feel like you got to be respected by artists. So like I need to gain these skill sets. I feel like that desire hasn't changed, where I still want to be a great artist. But during that time of taking on these responsibilities, I started figuring out, through doing, you actually figure out if you like doing what you're doing, versus I think I want to do that. And so what I found out, what I liked the most about this job, in a sense, is, again, the ability to strategize and see open spaces, and then have the freedom to research that and then bring it back in and then implement it. So again, like you were mentioning, the webtoon thing. So I felt like when Abe was here, it was my own 100%. I talked to Tom about this. I talked to Abe about this very openly, where I felt like I want to take on more responsibility, but I feel like I don't have the space to do that. Because I'm like, if I want to take on art directing responsibility, Abe's already the art director, and I don't want to step on his toes, right? And Tom kind of laughed at that. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, no one's going to stop you from like doing like amazing work. Like we all want you to do that. So it was, if anything, what I found out, like in almost any job, is we bring in our own preconceived insecurities or thought processes of how the work should be, and then kind of almost put our own obstacles into it. Again, Impact 3 is this very unique place where it feels like, or it is extremely open. So if anything, the only thing stopping you is yourself. Like, so for me, the only thing stopping me was, oh, I can't be art director. I'm not good enough yet. Or I can't be this, because again, like someone else has that position. But like to Tom and Abe, they're like, no, like take care of it. Like if anything, we'd be grateful if you took care of it, because again, it's taking off more responsibility from them to be able to do the things that they want to do. So that's where funny thing is, though, I think I started branching into that, where I'm like, oh, I'm going to create this course now. I want to create a course for our artists that we hire. So instead of them having to go through all these documents and then be very lost, and we have to keep reiterating the same emails, it's like, what if we just make a video course to teach them exactly step by step, like how to do that? And I'm like, I'm going to do that. So that's when, and that was before Abe left, where I was like, I'm going to start really building that out. But then once Abe left, like all those responsibilities changed. And then now there's more fundamental shift, where it's just like, because around the time that Abe left, a few months later, we hit COVID, basically, right? And I know we talked about like, oh, digital comics and all that, but because we were first starting in the comic industry, we were like, we need to be known in the traditional market. Like we want to have sales. We want to be able to show Hollywood directors like, hey, we made this many sales compared to this many sales on the comic side or whatever. But this is when, again, I've always read manhwa. I've always read like manga, and I've always read them online, basically. So I was like, I think we should start transitioning. But again, I didn't really have that voice at the time. Like I wasn't pushing it hard. But as we started to transition, and as I started to take on more responsibility, and as I felt like the waves shifting, I was like, okay, we got to really be on this. And I was like, I can't just say it, because my believability score, as we call it, is just super low in this area, right? I haven't been in the comic industry for more than a year, or maybe a year and a half by that time. But I didn't know any industry knowledge that Tom didn't already know, because he was already in those meetings with Diamond and all these. So I was just like, who am I to come with this? So again, step back and be like, if I was in Tom's position, what would I want to know, to actually accept this new plan from like a random kid down the street? Like, because Tom, again, he's always open, saying, I'll take ideas from anybody. But at the same time, it also depends on how you present the idea, right? So that's when I, again, took a step back. I was like, I think data. Like he always looks at data. So now
Mm-hmm.
I just scoured the internet, did the whole full research thing that you and I like love doing. Um, and yeah, so just compiled a whole presentation for him, being like, these are the data points. This is how much Diamond gets. Like this is how literally the biggest, site Marvel.com, their comics, and then Comixology that's ran by Amazon and all this type of stuff. This is how much traffic they get. They get, let's
Dude,
say, 30,000 visits a day and all this type of stuff.
I remember seeing that document for the first time and being so impressed. It literally felt like McKinsey had put together like a report like on the digital comic industry and like had pulled like source like data from everywhere and just like arranged it like beautifully in like a 30-page like slide deck and stuff. I mean, that was really impressive, man.
Really appreciate it. And again, when I was doing that, it again had that same like fire from the early days of like you feel like you're learning so much, you feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
growing so much, you feel like you're at the edge. And I think that's again one thing I do like is I always feel like I want to be at the fringes of something. Like I want to be at the fringe of the digital comics industry. Like I want to feel like we're innovating in this space. Now, to be honest, making digital comics is definitely not innovating, but like in the world of American comics,
Mm-hmm.
we're a bit further along than most people. Like we're doing something strategically behind the scenes that probably won't come to fruition for the next like 5 years. But other countries are doing it. So it's just like, all right, cool. Let's learn from the winners. And so all that is like, for me, the thing I started really liking about the job. And then this is where it's like, I feel like this is more stuff that the chief creative officer does. They find out the strategies. They find out putting the right people together to execute that strategy. And obviously for me, I always had this ambitious thing of building my own studio and everything. So if anything, I wanted to be the CEO. But also seeing Tom and all the stuff that the CEO has to do, I'm like, I don't want some of those responsibilities. Like some of them are just like, oh my god, like this is just headaches. And so maybe I will, maybe I still want that. But like for me, it's like I want to continue to stay in this like creative field and
Mm-hmm.
the creative side of things. So I was like, oh, chief creative officer sounds very nice. I still don't know exactly, what the day-to-day responsibilities are. And that's kind of again an ongoing conversation with Tom of just like, this is my dream, this is what I build towards. But I also won't know if that's exactly what I want to do unless I'm actually doing it. And so for me, because this is so wide and open, I get to test those things. I feel like doing strategy is super exciting for me. So I'm gonna just keep doing that and then keep pitching those ideas. And Tom is just like, actually, what you're doing is interestingly viz dev or biz dev. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're going, you're getting clients, you're finding out partnerships, you're doing all these things. And I was like, oh, that's also very exciting for me.
So do you
So
have any other examples of you going out kind of like on your own and pitching something to him?
yeah, so I think there's a few like those long pitch decks, kind of that slide
Yeah.
decks that we did. We probably made three or four. One was again the transition to digital, dominating the digital world, and why as a company we have to really shift into that.
Is that
I
something
would
we
say that
can
was the
share
biggest.
in the show notes, or is that something that's kind of private to the company right now?
I'll have to ask Tom
Okay.
to see if for me I feel like we should. It's interesting because it could be competition, obviously. Like if
Yeah.
other big companies figure that out.
Yeah,
Again,
no
we're not
worries.
actually
I
doing
just
anything
thought,
new.
hey, if Tom's open to sharing it, I think it could be really interesting for people
Yeah,
to check out.
I think we definitely should be sharing more of this information because again, the quickest way to build an audience is to give information and education for free.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'll check in with him to see what stage we're at with that type of information. But yeah, so that was the biggest one. That was probably the one where, again, like you said, probably got the most respect because I was able to concisely put together a deck explaining exactly what steps we have to take to transition. And then right as we're about to transition, the next thing we need to do is how do we build out a pipeline for this new like product that we're trying
Mhm.
to build. And so that was the next one that me and Newell started working on. We started breaking down the animation industry. We started breaking down other countries, how they're making comics, and again doing all that research, and then getting together. I probably at the end with Casey to figure out, is this actually doable? Like, is this budget, is this pipeline actually implementable? Um, and then I would say, let me actually see, Google Sheets. Let me actually see. Actually, don't want to take too much time. You could
I'll
probably
take
cut
your
out dead
time,
air,
man.
right?
What's that?
You could probably cut out the dead air.
Yeah. I take your time, man. There's no rush.
And then the third one was creating impactful IP. So we're actually breaking down not only, the logistical process and the actual like pipeline process of building something. It's like the whole the whole idea from the very get-go. It's like, how do you start that? How do you start accumulating this, or building out this idea? How do you actually talk to these artists? Because one thing we also notice is there's a lot of disconnect from managers versus artists. And so let's say Tom is a manager in the sense of he's actually the chief creative officer right now, and he wants a vision executed. He had this great idea, but he doesn't know how to communicate it in a way that the artist is able to translate. So we're trying to like define words, really figure out, basically the main thing was defining words, because Tom might say something and the artist might understand something differently, but also to understand how to communicate efficiently to make sure that there's no like a loss in translation, but also from a time perspective, how to make the whole process faster. So that was another thing where it's like, first is the transition, next is building out the pipeline, and then the third is making sure the communication within that pipeline is smooth. And now this fourth one is one, I don't think I can say this because it probably is going to be a big competition thing, but basically acquiring another company.
Okay.
So this is where I started really looking at the whole pipeline. Again, looking into research of the biggest thing is just other countries. Like I feel like they're about 5 to 10 years ahead of us. So all I had to do was literally find their documents and then be like, oh, this is their business plan. Cool, let's just copy paste that. And it's super simple in my head, but for Tom, he was just like, no, this is like grade A information. Because partly what I did was, this is also, you know what, I would just tell this. I think anyone can do this. Basically, go onto any investment fund that trades big companies.
Okay.
And basically, they release their research information for free. So you can find PDFs for free on the internet about your competition, basically.
Wow.
So I could probably go into Google and see investment funds that invest into Google and see exactly why they're investing into Google. So they'll be like, their user base has increased by 20% year over year, and for the next year they're strategizing to beat COVID with this strategy plan and this. So it's just like, oh, like I know exactly what the largest companies are doing. And again, in America, like, you know, everyone's kind of moving at the same pace, but I can also just look into other industries and other countries that might be, again, a few years ahead of us, and I could look at all their plans. So that's basically what I did. I basically found a white paper for all their strategies for the next like coming years. And I was like, oh, cool. Like American companies in the comic industry are probably like 10 years behind other countries. So it's like, if we're competing against those countries, we would probably lose. But if we're competing just in America right now, it's like we're gonna leapfrog them by jumping across. And so that's kind of what I introduced to Tom. I was like, Tom, you got to really read this. He finally read it. He's like, oh my God, mind blown. We got to change the whole course of the company. And that's again where we started to really make that transition. But now it's just like analyzing each part of the process. I was like, I think we really need to build this. I can't say it, but we really need to build this, and that's going to become a core thesis to us becoming the next Disney in a sense. We have to control the whole creative outputs and process. And so that's where I started looking into if those companies existed in the United States, and there's a couple. There's actually a very few amount, but now we're just talking to them to see if they're interested in selling their company or, you know, partnership or acquiring, or if ultimately we might have to build our own. And so again, that's kind of the talk now, where it's like I'm discussing with Tom. This is the biz dev part of it, where I'm messaging their CEOs and all this type of stuff. So yeah, I would say that was the next transition, or that is the last transition.
Super exciting, man. It's exciting, and that's only over the course of 3 years. Everything we've talked about, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I think. When did I get hired? Was it 2018 or 2019? I'm so bad with time. Like
I think you started a couple months before me.
When did you start?
I started in 2018.
Okay.
I think it was like October 2018, September, October, and I think you probably started that summer.
Yes, in the August time frame.
Yeah.
That's when I got officially hired. Okay, so has that been 3 years? I don't know math.
Not
2.5?
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta start remembering these dates. But so yeah, it is interesting. If I zoom out, it feels like I've grown a lot in 2.5 years. But to be honest, it feels like I've really slowed. And I don't know if that's because I haven't been doing more art, because, you know, as I'm taking more responsibilities of the managerial duties, if anything, the fastest way to scale is to outsource.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure exactly.
But that's ultimately like what an art director does, right?
True. If anything, Tom said you might not want to be a chief creative officer or art director because you're not going to really touch the art. If anything, you're going to direct the art. You're going to direct other people how to do the art. And so maybe that's the case. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about growth and choosing which areas of growth you want to focus on. Because again, even to be an art director, there's so many skill sets within that role that you have to master.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I made this whole document. And again, great thing with Tom is you can ask him these questions of like, I want this position in the company. Are these the skill sets I need to build to get that position in the
Mm-hmm.
company? And obvious ones are like leadership, kind of broad, but it's like communication, the ability to give energy to people, to motivate them, to give a vision. The next one is, I guess, branding in a sense. It's like understanding how to brand a project, the art direction behind that. Design, which is again the actual literal like being able to communicate concept art to somebody and also execute it if they aren't able to do it, and to show them an example. Marketing, understanding bits of marketing to understand once you have this project, it can't just live in a bubble. Like it can't be in its own small space. You have to be able to bring it to a larger audience.
Mm-hmm.
How do you frame that? So it's like some of these skills, I was like, okay, these are like the top 5 skills I want to start learning. But again, like I said, it's like it really feels like over time, a lot of my goals start like changing, but they're weirdly still part of this larger goal of like building this creative juggernaut of a company. And so, yeah, like I would say that kind of wraps up where we're at with impact theory. Do you have any like questions specifically about that?
Yeah, so I wanted to get into your side hustles as well, and kind of how have you seen, because I know you've been doing some stuff with the merch as well, right? Like you've kind of picked that back up in the last year or two. I
Yes.
think in the last year, and like I wanted to hear your thoughts on like how you balance, because I mean you're doing a lot at Impact Theory, right? You have a lot of responsibilities and stuff, and how you see that balance between doing your own stuff on the side and like the value of that versus I mean just going all out at Impact Theory as well.
Very, very good question. Um, Again, funny thing is probably the people who are going to be listening to this are exactly our audience, because
Mm-hmm.
my thing is I feel like I'm a little bit weird in how I frame this, but even for this type of audience I think it's going to be a bit weird. So I almost treat impact theory like the last place I'm going to work at. So what I mean by that is Tom has this vision of everyone who works here should work here, not should, but it's like he wants to build a environment where they want to retire here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I believe the same thing. So if I was going to build my own company, I want to build a culture where it's like people want to retire here, which allows for growth, which allows for change, which allows for stability, all these things. And so I think Impact Theory is one of those places where I'm still so early on where I could change the direction of the company. Again, like I've done in the comic industry and everything. I feel like even in HR, if I have a great idea, I can pitch
Mm-hmm.
it to Tom, be like, here's how we implement it, and he'll do it. So that's one unique thing I feel like that I have available, where it's like I don't even have to build my own company. I am building my own company. Like Impact Theory allows for the space to build the exact culture, exact space that you want to come to work with. Where it's like even if again, even if I stop getting paid, other than I have to like have build money on the side to sustain myself, I'll work here for free. Um, so that's kind of the mindset I'm going into my side hustles with, where it's like all in all, everything's ultimately for the same goal, which is how do we get kids have a growth mindset before the age of 15? For me, how do I get the mindset of improving our lives so that we improve the lives of others? They all tie into each other. So, and impact theory for me is again the fastest vehicle to get to that world. Um, so, when I think about my side hustles, part of it could be just artistic expression. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
the actual day-to-day job, like where it's like I'm coloring a comic, that no longer fulfills, let's say the creative juices for me. Maybe I want to make my own art. And that's what I do with TikTok, with fan art, with all this type of stuff. I do that. But if I'm going to start a business, this is where it's like, how is this ultimately going to be beneficial for all of us? And by all of us, I mean everyone at Impact Theory. So when I looked into merchandise again, um, the biggest driver of revenue for all these major companies is merchandise. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
not their media products, right? So those are just risky. Those are hella risky. They don't have much profit on them. It's more again, those are more like branding and culture to ultimately have people buy their merchandise. And so where it's like we haven't really mastered that yet. And again, I think there's this weird thing again with the empowerment space is it's not really cool. It might be cool within the space, but like to the outside world, you're kind of weird for like wanting to improve yourself. Weirdly enough, it's
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
weird how that's kind of looked down upon, or maybe because the world's cynical in that sense. But I also think because it's actually filled with a lot of like snake oil salesmen and corny people, it kind of rebranded it in that way.
Yep.
But that is one thing where I think we need a master, which is merchandising. And so that's kind of how I started looking back at the clothing business, where it's like I understand what makes a clothing company cool. It's like, how do I bring that coolness into the same space? But for me, I actually wanted to start in the IP space. So not exactly making empowerment cool. I'm going to still focus on our stories. So it's like, how do we create merchandise for our stories? And that's where I was like, it started out with, again, I just want this to be a creative outlet. I just want to do this for fun. But again, if I'm going to take away 20 hours a week into building this, then it's just like, I want to scale this. I want to make this something that generates a lot of revenue that either one allows me to pay my own salary so I can quote unquote quit Impact Theory. And what I mean by that is I no longer have to take any responsibility that I don't want to take, right? So let's say I don't want to do coloring anymore. I'll literally forfeit my salary, hire somebody to take over my position so I can now work on strategy or whatever that case might be. Because no matter what you do at work, even if you love it, there's always going to be 10%, 20%, whatever percent that you just have to do because, again, that is the exercise. You just have to pull those weights. Like, you just have to do those things. So maybe selfishly, I'm building this so I can replace some of those responsibilities.
Yeah.
And for that, I need enough revenue to take over my salary, right? So that's kind of the thought process. And then I would say that's when I started talking to Will, because Will saw that how much sales I was able to get off just my first launch. He's like, whoa, if you had like real marketing behind this, we can make a good chunk of money. So that's where I was like, you know what, maybe this is smart to partner with him. I would almost never partner because, again, I have like my own creative vision and everything. But I was like, well, if I'm now making this company purely for the sake that I want either Impact Theory 5 years from now to acquire it, so I'm going to build this company with Will so that ultimately I'm going to sell it back to Tom. And we're going to sell it for equity in the company. So it's like, so right now, you know, maybe we have less than 1% of equity in Impact Theory. No one actually knows. But my thing is, if I'm going to, again, build Impact Theory, basically retire here, I want to retire with more equity in this company. How do I get equity in a leapfrogging way? I can, you know, change positions, you know, maybe get another like small 0.5% bump or whatever the case might be. Or I could build something that grows faster than Impact Theory in a certain space, and it makes it enticing enough for them to acquire it at a later date for even more equity in a sense, right? So that's where we can sell it for maybe 5% equity. I don't know what the price would be, but that's kind of like the thought process. Now, most people are like, that's crazy. Why would you sell the company that's going to make you financially free back to the same company that you're working with? So there's some thought process there where obviously we're going to negotiate what those roles actually are. But because, again, we have such a selfishly aligned goal, it doesn't make sense to compete for me. Like, what I always had this thing coming into Impact Theory, which is, why compete if you can collaborate? I've always said that, where it's like, why should you compete if you could just collaborate and move even farther, right? It's like, go alone and you go fast, but go together and you go far, right? So it's just like, I'm not here to go fast. Like, I'm not here just to make a quick buck or anything. I'm here to make, like, change culture. Like, that's what we're here to do. Like, we're trying to change generations, and we understand, like, going into this, and this is where I really feel Tom when he says, like, I don't think many people at Impact Theory even know like how hard it is to beat Disney or to actually become Disney, like to actually impact culture. He's like, this is a multi-generational plan. Like, you are not going to just win in the next 20 years. You're going to have to do this for 80 years, 200 years. Like, that's what excites me for me. Like, I really like really ambitious goals because that gets me up in the morning. But I don't know if you're about to ask something.
I mean, based like just riffing off of that, like, what advice would you have for someone that's kind of like on the fence? Like, should I start my own company or should I go work with someone else? You've kind of addressed it already, but I'd love to hear you just address it directly.
So is this, can you flesh out more of who this character is, or is it more like a general question?
Yeah. So like, if someone's wondering like, oh, should I start my own company? Or should I go work for someone that has that's already like you're saying, like 10 years ahead, and has already like done a bunch of the legwork,
like the groundwork, everything. I would say for that person, this is where it's hard to give general advice, because if anyone's trying to start a business, they should already know the stat that like 90% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. And so if they're going to make their own business, they got to know exactly why they're doing it. And it's not wrong to do it for just money, but if you're just doing it for money, it might be easier to, again, just get a job and get a stable income, versus like putting your house on the line to put out a loan to get built, like all this type of stuff. I'm not sure exactly what their business plan is, but I would say start with that, which is like, why am I trying to start this company? And once you have that why, once you understand that, then you could now look for who else in this space is doing that. Is there anyone else with this same desire that I have, but is just decades ahead of me? If there isn't, you have to start the company. because now you are the one bringing this new purpose to life and everything, and that is going to drive you day and night. But if there is someone else with the same vision and the same plan, and if anything, the answer to why compete then collaborate is because you can't collaborate with the person because they're trying to do something else. Like your selfish desires aren't aligned. That's when you create your own merchandising company with a different vision. Again, that's for me, that would be the main reason why you would create your own thing. Again, to have full control over the vision, full control over like when you get to sleep or not. Like there's definitely some benefits to, you know, having full control in that way. But also obviously comes with a lot of sacrifices. So understanding that why, seeing if anyone else in that space has the same vision, then seeing if that they're the right person to learn from. Obviously know their character, know their who they are, and yeah, just it never hurts to just get an interview with them or try to get the job or whatever if you're like kind of questioning. But without knowing the person, that would be like the general thing, which is know your why, see if anyone else is doing it in that space, and then figure out, is it worth learning from them again to get that source of knowledge? Because again, you can always quit. You can always quit after and then like build your own thing. That's the thing. But again, there are certain businesses where it's like you have this certain, like for me, there are certain things that we're doing right now where I'm like, if we don't capture this wave right now, that opportunity is going to be like 10 times harder like a few years later. So there are certain things where timing comes into it.
That's fascinating. But yeah, I mean, the way you approach a side hustle is basically you're starting the business on the side that you think should be started internally, but like it hasn't gotten buy-in yet. And so you're just starting it on the side to eventually like be like, hey, there's this thing, you can buy it now. I mean, yeah. Because just like on top of that, you also told me that you want to start a anime channel on YouTube this year, right? And the goal is to get it to what, like 100,000 subscribers, I think. And so that's kind of the same idea, right?
Same thing.
Yeah.
So again, it goes into, if I was running this company, I would start a merchandising line, I would start a clothing line, and I would start a YouTube channel. The only thing is, again, with where we're at in the company, we don't have enough resources to divert it into so many different things. And then we also don't have the talent who can take care of that right now. So it's just like, all right, cool. Then I'll just do it myself. And then I'll also be able to reap the benefits if, like, worst case scenario is, well, actually, I don't even know what best or worst case scenario is. Like, some might say the best case scenario is Impact Theory rejects the offer to buy the merchandising line. But cool, now you have a merchandising line that's doing like 7 figures in revenue, 8 figures in revenue, and he doesn't want to buy it. Cool, like you're still fine. All right, now cool, you have a YouTube channel with like 1 million subscribers, and he doesn't want to acquire it. Cool, it's totally fine. Like you now have so it's just like there's no losing in this fact. It's just like for me, I feel like this is the most beneficial thing to do together in a sense. So like because I'm the only one, let's say, forwarding the YouTube channel idea and doing it all myself, I should obviously get all the benefits if we choose to collaborate or sell or whatever the thing is. Now for this YouTube channel, I've talked to Tom about this because obviously we've always talked about like creating a podcast or a YouTube channel or something for the anime sphere. But for him to be on it, it just takes so much of his time versus the reward to start a whole nother channel again. So I'm just like, all right, cool. I understand that. The next thing is we have to hire talent. So we have to hire anime personalities. But the awesome thing about this world is it's all democratized. So like if you're a talented anime person, all you have to do is make your own channel. Why would you ever work for someone else's channel, right? If you could just make your own channel. And that's kind of the problem that we ran into, which is like if we build up a channel of like talent, they can always leave and build their own channel again because they're the one that's actually carrying the backbone. In the beginning, it's going to be the company, but after a while, the personality is going to outshine the company, and then they can just leave the channel. And obviously, we don't want to like build a whole like channel where we're like putting like chains on them, where like you can never leave, or like we want them to have the freedom. So now it's like, how do we create a system that allows people to grow but also want to stay? And that's where revenue sharing comes in. And so we've talked about all those things, and so that's where I talked about like I'm going to build this channel. I'm going to do this either way because I also think this is fun. And then once I build it, maybe it's not the best to acquire it because maybe the channel isn't branded specifically for IT stuff, right? Because if I start talking about hentai or like 18 plus like weird stuff in the anime space, maybe Impact Theory doesn't want to be branded with that. But instead, it's like Impact Theory can work as a management for that YouTube channel. So they could be the ones finding the sponsorships and the ads and everything. And so they'll get a cutback of that. But then, so I don't have to, spend my time looking for ads and all this type of stuff. So I'm willing to, maybe in the beginning, because they're doing majority of the work and I have like, let's say 50K subscribers, they'll get like, I don't know what the right percentage is, but maybe 20%, 50%. I don't know what the cut they'll get for
Yeah.
that to pay basically pay their costs and some profit on them. And then as the channel grows, so let's say 1 million subscribers, you're making so much money off the sponsorships that they're going to now only take 5% of the sponsorship money or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out ways to scale this in a sense. So now it's like I don't even have to be the one doing the channel. Now we just become a YouTube management brand for the anime space or whatever.
Yeah.
So those are some of the strategies we've been talking about.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, some people listening are probably like, they heard you talk about like putting in like 14-hour days before, and obviously that's probably changed a little bit, but like how do you balance like these massive, I mean, they're pretty ambitious side projects with your full-time job? Like are you like not, are you sleeping like 5 hours a night, you know, and just like working on this thing all weekend, or like what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think one is have something. For me, I'm very much driven by like big projects. I feel like if the project isn't big enough, I don't wake up. Like it just doesn't excite me. So like I have to lie to, I'm very aware that getting a YouTube channel to 100K with only putting maybe like 20 hours a week into it, because, you know, I'm putting in, let's say 40 to 60 hours a week in IT, 20 hours a week or more into Chaotic M, and then like 20 or more into this YouTube channel. That's going to hit 100 hours a week. That's like literally like not possible to do more than that, at least for me, to sustain that. So now it's just like the thing has to be exciting enough for me to want to do it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, sometimes it's a struggle, because again, a lot of these things, like starting it from the beginning, there's a lot of not fun stuff you have to do. You have to fill out a lot of paperwork for the LLC. You have to like go to all these meetings with Chase Bank to open the bank. Like there's a lot of fun, like not fun stuff.
Yeah.
But again, because the larger vision is exciting, that's one huge thing. I think that's the main thing. And then the other thing is like how to split your time. Is you got to look at your hours. It's like, I forget how much hours are there in a week, like 260 something or something. But it's just like you can, half of it, or not half, but like 8 hours, let's say, every day is going to go into sleep.
Yeah.
And then the rest, you literally have 16 hours left, right?
So it's 168 hours a week.
168. Okay, got it. Not 200. Okay. That'd be amazing if we had more time.
Yeah.
But let's say 168, right? So each day I just fraction it into, all right, 8 hours is going to go into sleep. And to be honest, this is where I don't recommend people do what I'm doing, because I actually think in the long term I'm ruining myself. But for some reason I don't take my own advice. So it's the whole thing of take care of your health before wealth, right? Because like if you only focus on wealth, then in your future all your wealth is going to go into your health, because you didn't take care of your health. So I know this, but I'm not doing it for some reason. I feel like I can grind away my health to do this. So again, for example, like I literally, this might be gross to people, but I literally probably only take a shower like once every 3 to 4 days. Partly because I also don't like exercise at all. So I'm not sweating. I'm literally just sitting in front of a computer, just working. So I save time there. I eat maybe 1 or 2 meals a day. And this is again bad, because like each meal is probably only like 500 or 600 calories. So I'm literally losing weight. So some people get a visual. I'm 5'9" and I'm 117 pounds at the moment. So I'm wasting away. I'm literally wasting away. So I don't recommend people do this. So if anything, what I should do is next year or this year, I should, say I'm going to focus on health first, eat 3 meals a day, get to a healthy weight, and then like keep your same schedule. But right now, again, exercising doesn't excite me in the same way that starting a YouTube channel or starting a clothing brand or doing comics excite me. So it's always like, if I had a priority list, it's like those things excite me more than going on the ground and doing a few push-ups. So again, this is bad advice, because if anything, health should be at the top of that list.
So that's that's interesting, because I mean, it's kind of, I guess, in a way, what it takes to have so many projects underway, right? I mean, as far as like at the level that you're chasing after them, right?
Yes, that's another thing. No one has to do this. Like, no one's forcing me to do this. Like, I'm choosing to wake up every day and do this, right? Like, if I choose to work, let's say 100 hours a week at Impact Theory, it's not because they're paying me to work 100 hours a week at Impact Theory. It's because I want to work 100 hours a week at Impact Theory. So as people have noticed, or as Tom has noticed, it's like some of the projects at Impact Theory no longer excite me in the same way that, let's say, a clothing business or a YouTube channel does. And because he's not the type of person to put chains on us and be like, you have to work. If anything, we're already working above and beyond like what a quote unquote normal work week or work person is doing. So he doesn't care. He's just like, if that fulfills you more so that you can come back and work and be excited at Impact Theory, go do it, right? And I think, again, for the long-term relationships, like that's the best thing to do. Because he said he's excited that me and Will are starting this business together. Because even if it's taking, let's say, mind power away from some of the strategy stuff we do at Impact Theory, it's like we're going to learn so much more of like building a business and all the strategy and all that skill set. It's like we're going to class again. And he's like, I don't even have to pay for that class, you know? So I think it's, again, mutually beneficial. So that works well. And then for me, I'm not going to lie. Like I still have distractions. Like if anything, I'm sure, well, I think I'm, again, in a very lucky space where reading manga is also technically part of my job. So again, it's like people love playing video games. Just make playing video games part of your job. Obviously, that's much harder to do than not to do. Like it's hard to make a living off that. Like I started reading manga probably when I was in elementary. You know, always at Borders in the cool air while it's hot in the sun. My mom would take us to the library, and it's just like I would just sit in the corner and read manga.
Yeah.
And again, that would be, I guess, naturally it would pull me. Some people play video games. Some people play soccer. Some people, like, everyone has their own like natural inclination towards something. I guess for me it was storytelling with manga books and then drawing. And it's like it's almost obvious now that I would be working at a company that would be doing something creative in this field, because that's, again, if I just continue to follow my natural inclination, and that's exactly what I want to do, that's probably going to put me in the best position to do exactly what I'm doing now. And so that's another thing, which is all you got to do is just read Naval's How to Get Rich tweet storm, and like it tells you exactly how to, like, don't worry too much about like the money part of it. Just think about like how to build a rich life in a sense, like a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
And so one of them is specialized knowledge. Like, again, follow your natural inclinations. It just so happens that all my knowledge in reading manga and webtoons and all that positions me greatly to have this information to pitch to Tom to have us switch to business, you know? So it just, some of those coincidences come. And another one now is like, I wish I knew Korean, because if I knew Korean, I would have so much of an edge
for the manhwa,
in this industry. But yeah, like you said, manhwa. So, but now it's like, fuck, I wish I never lost how to read Korean. So now I'm debating, should I spend like 10 hours a week trying to relearn that and all that type of stuff? But yeah, so again, follow your natural inclinations. Make sure you put yourself into positions where those can be exploited to their maximum ability. So again, I'm distracted in a way by reading manga, but now I'm not just mindlessly reading manga. I have a Word doc open by the side. So anytime I read something interesting, I take notes. I ask, why did that story work? What pacing did it have? What panel composition? So it's like I'm always trying to use that opportunity to learn. But because I'm human, I need 20%, somewhat around that amount of time in the week, to just do something where I don't think, where I can just relax.
Yeah.
And yeah, like enjoy myself with my wife, or with funny thing, I don't walk outside, but like I think most people would do that, like go for a walk or exercise, or something that doesn't take like mental energy into like, oh, the next business I'm building or anything.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for me that's mindlessly scrolling through TikTok. Again, weirdly enough, TikTok is also part of like the job, in a sense of like understanding the market, understanding what's hot in culture, all this type of stuff. But when I'm watching it, I don't think of it like that. I'm just here to enjoy the videos, save them and do it. So yeah.
Dude, that's fascinating. I'm amazed by your level of like clarity, and then just like focus on your projects. So cool. Thanks for sharing that. And the last thing I want to ask you about is the biggest things you've learned from Tom personally, and also just like if anyone's considering like a similar path of like going to work for a big entrepreneur, big creator, like what can they expect to get out of that, and why would you recommend that path?
Got it. The biggest things I've learned from Tom, I think this is similar to when I was younger, and I was raised up in a Christian household, and my mom would tell me to read the Bible every single day. And I was like, the Bible literally makes no sense, Mom. Like all these verses, they contradict each other. They say nothing. But then what you find is all the Bible is basically a culmination of like knowledge that has been passed through time and survived because there's some grain, again, a nugget of truth in each verse in a sense. So again, my mom said, read it. And then when something happens in your life, that verse will become enlightening in a sense. And so in the same way, I think as I've been reading books and, watching these videos and now working with Tom, is they also have these verses in their head. And their verses are, do and believe that which moves you towards your goals. No bullshit, what would it take? Like all these kind of like quips and quick things. yeah, like they just start molding your mindset. They start molding how you think. And so I would say that was kind of the most important thing. Again, literally, I said two incredibly things, which is no bullshit what it take, and sorry, codes here again. So no bullshit what would it take, and then also do and believe that which moves you towards your goals.
Yeah.
If people actually understood what those meant, their lives would change forever. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's always kind of like that. And so for me, being able to work with somebody who actually implements those into their life, and then you see them saying those things as they're making decisions, is like, like they're not just like saying it and then keeping it on a poster on a wall and so they can feel motivated. It's like, no, they're actually making life-changing decisions based on kind of like these mental models they built over their years of experience. So one is learning those same words, right? Being able to take those, the whole like 25 bullet point impact theory list, that's basically all of it. But like Tom said, he can't even like repeat all of them, but he knows he lives them.
Yeah.
So it became so ingrained in his behavior. So that's a huge thing where it's like, if you've actually implemented all of these into your life, this is what your life looks like. And, you see what both of them built. And I'm sure you could find that for anyone who's achieved a lot of things. They have certain models and code that they're running in their head. So I would say one, learn that piece of code. And then two, actually know how to implement it. But I think three, that only comes through experience. Like I think something has to happen in your life for you to actually implement it. Because again, right now, I know I should be exercising. I know health before wealth. That's another code that's running in my head, but it just hasn't been unlocked yet. There's some bug or something that's stopping me from really running that code. And I think sadly, this is how most human nature is I might have to get into an accident, or I might have to like faint or something. And my body's like, yo, like you got to actually take care of your health. And then that's going to shock that code into like running actually. So I think, again, putting yourself into those positions where you're more likely to run into situations that run that code is powerful. So again, working at a position where everyone around you is super ambitious, everyone's super driven, everyone has this like strong purpose of working together and wanting to win for everybody, like that's more likely to put you into that mindset. So I highly recommend finding that community in whichever space you are. And I think there was a second part to that question of like, how do people do that, or what was it?
The second part to that question was about what value can someone expect from going to work for like one of their mentors or the person they want to become,
Yeah, I think most people know this, but just like how college, like in our culture, I still feel like college is so like put on a pedestal of like, this is how you brand yourself and how you get your self-worth from. If people could use that same mentality they have, that same image they have of college, and just put it onto anybody, like as an educator, just think of it as literally the internet has opened the space to literally the best teachers in the world. And in most cases, you can actually get that education for free. So you don't even have to start with like working with them. I think Gary Vee said this is again another thing where it's just like, actually, here's another quote. I think this was from Jim Rohn. Is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think someone else said, and it might have been Gary Vee or somebody else, says you're the average of the 5 ideas you spend the most time with. So with the internet, anybody can be a mentor. Any idea you can put into your head and again start running that code. So I would say start there. And then again, once you find your core pieces of code and the core pieces of value and your why, once you find someone who kind of matches that, all you got to do is, are they like 10 years, 20 years, 50 years ahead of you? And is there something of value that you could gain from that? And the funny thing is, as I was just saying, the 10 years, 20 years, whatever, sometimes you might learn just as much from someone who's 10 years behind you, who's a child, because they have some innocence and some fresh perspective that they get that you won't have because you lost that. In the same way that when I first interned at Impact Theory, Tom was like, I don't care if you're an intern. If anything, he brought like the script and he brought like the comic book to me because he's like, you have fresh eyes. Like you have never seen this before. You're able to look at this in a different way. So I think that's also, again, incredibly valuable. So look both ways for your mentors. And I would say that's the value. You'll get perspective and then you'll get an example and then you'll actually see what can be achieved if you follow that path. Sometimes we need to see it to believe it. And so being close to it, being able to touch it, to feel it, is very motivational. I for sure would say I probably wouldn't be working this hard if I wasn't working at Impact Theory. Because I worked hard, before I came here. I was still working those crazy hours on the weekends, going to college, going to a second job, while also trying to build a clothing brand. but it definitely wasn't at this level, I would say.
Amazing. I think it's a great place to end. To finish, where can people find you online? Where can they find the clothing brand? Where can they follow you on socials?
Yeah, awesome. I would say go to Instagram and TikTok might be where my art is most active on. So they're both Avidya 1997, AVIDYA 1997. And then I would say the new endeavor I'm trying to do right now, the two new ones are the clothing brand. So chaoticm.com is the website. So chaotic and then just the letter m.com. That's where you can find the coolest anime manhwa merch that we're going to be releasing. New launch is actually just going to come out probably end of January. So we're pretty excited about that one. And then the last one, which is the YouTube channel that I'm trying to build. That one, just like you, we're still kind of deciding on a name, but I think we're settling on the next episode.
Okay.
So
I dig it.
Yep. So yeah, just probably once that releases, it might be late February, but yeah.
And that's going to be you guys commenting on manhwa, manga, or is it going to be actually like animation style stuff?
So I would say in the beginning, because it's there's not much I guess bandwidth to really make like those animation things or anything. I'm starting with commentary and reviews. So I'm gonna bring forth some of the best new manhwa that are breaking into the industry. Same thing with manga. Give you kind of a summary of what it is, why you should read it, what rating do I give it out of 10. So it's kind of like a review channel in the beginning, and it will soon expand into actually creating original content, creating reactions, creating a news network on like the new stuff that is coming out in the anime industry. That's kind of the plan for like this year.
Sweet. Let me know any way I can help with that. I've been deep in the YouTube game now since I'm working on Noah stuff, so I'd be more than happy to help.
That'll be amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely need some help on what actually gets the YouTube channel popular in the first year. Obviously we have like Impact Theory and Will and everybody there, but anyone who has that knowledge, I'm definitely gonna be drinking from. So
yeah,
actually after this interview, can I ask you a few questions about that?
Yeah. I mean, this is the end, so
cool. All right, peace out, y'all. Thank you for listening.
Peace.
Now it's time to more business talk.
Yeah. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you want more career interviews like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I set a personal goal for the first 90 days of 2021. I'm going to upload one video every week, so there's a lot more coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.